organization and speeches.
Yeah.
That's Vice Mayor.
And dry cleaning.
Stadium's final week. Stadium's final week.
It was so cold in here. It was so warm in that conference room.
We ready?
I like it when it's cooler because when it's warmer,
Yeah.
it starts fading.
Welcome, everybody. I would like to call to order our January 25th meeting, 2010, of our City Council and Redevelopment Agency. With that, let's start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Second, are there any recommended changes to the order of the agenda? Okay. Mr. Rubens, item 3, report from closed session.
No reportable items from closed session tonight.
Okay, great, thank you. Item 4, council, the communications and announcements. Maybe let's start over on the right side.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I have a couple. First off, Vice Mayor Ahmad and myself sit on the fire board. At the last meeting, I'll let the chief talk about all the big stuff, but at the last meeting, I was elected chair, so we have that. And then the only other announcement I have is from the Arts and Culture Commission, as I'm their liaison, and I'll just read briefly what was emailed to me. In an effort to promote public art and the artist community of San Carlos, the Arts and Culture Commission, in conjunction with the San Carlos Fine Arts Association, has installed a public art display in the vacant commercial spaces at 1001 Laurel, and the commission will continue to seek other opportunities to display art at vacant locations. And with that commission, we'll be losing 2 members to terming out, so the public will know in the next couple months there'll be 2 openings in the Arts and Culture Commission. That's it.
Mr. Todd?
Mr. Mayor, I wanted to remind folks our very own CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, Cheryl Palmer, is going to be retiring, and she's got some festivities coming up on Thursday at Sparky's Garage. If you go to the Chamber of Commerce website, you can sign up for that. And I'll look obliquely at Mr. Grocott, who is a Lion. I know that there's an event coming up on Saturday, so if you want to load up, I'll leave that to Mr. Grocott, but I get to be an auctioneer this time, so. Ooh, he's right.
Yeah.
That's it for me.
Mr. Grocott, I'll pass on to you. Announcements?
I wasn't going to have any until I got thrown the softball there. But yes, the Lions Club at Mahaney Hall is having their crab feed, annual crab feed. And I believe the event starts at 6 with drinks and that sort of thing, and dinner is at 7. So come and have fun at the crab feed. It's a fundraiser, by the way, for things that the Lions supports.
Great. Mr. Casella?
I have nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Well, I have 2 items. One deals with a very special event we have in town called Week of the Family, but I'll do that from the podium there. We have a proclamation here for Week of the Family. And if I could ask one of our old famous stars from City Council, Don Eaton. And the chair. Okay, beautiful. Come on up, Chair. So let me read this. Is the microphone working? Yes. Let me read. I think I want to read the whole thing. This every word I think means a lot for Week in the Family. We've been having this done for several years in our city. It's
Randy, sorry. Thank you.
It is proclamation, whereas a family is the fundamental unit and basic strength of any free and orderly society, and it's fitting to honor the family as a basic unit is essential to the continued well-being of the city of San Carlos. Whereas it is the family of America youth are nurtured and taught the values vital to success and happiness in life, including respect for others, honesty, service, hard work, loyalty, and love. Whereas the family provides the support necessary for people to pursue their goals. Whereas it's appropriate to honor the family unit as essential to the continued well-being of the United States and the city of San Carlos. Whereas the 2010 Week of the Family Goals are to strengthen family relations, give the community tools to help families function, promote family life, educate families on roles and responsibilities, honor and pay tribute to families, and encourage families serving families. Now, therefore, I, Randy Royce, Mayor, the City of San Carlos, proclaim that through January 25th through January 31st, as across the banner across from the post office, you will also see those dates, as Week of the Family for this year. Thank you, and congratulations. I will say there's a lot of work that goes into it. There's events every night. My wife is involved as a teacher librarian at Heather. She came home tonight with a whole list of what the children have the opportunity to do this evening. Go on to our city webpage. There's a whole listing of activities, and encourage everybody and every family and every child to participate this week. So thank you again. And one other item, would also like to invite Neil Chicazola up for a little special announcement and recognition. First of all, I know this guy very well, so it's very appropriate that I talk about Neil. Neil is our 2010 citizen, or 2009? Or both. Why don't you claim both years? The current Citizen of the Year for the City of San Carlos. This is a chamber-sponsored recognition. The gala was this last Wednesday down at the Hotel Sofitel. I had a personal family matter I had to go to. I hear it was a wonderful event. But to talk about Neil, he's a man of some very unique and special skills. He's probably one of the only half a dozen people that could start the Seagraves, our old historical fire truck, at the museum. He's been involved for years and years, from the Great Separation to the visioning of San Carlos, to one of the first art and wine fairs that we had, which is a tremendous event in the fall that the Chamber puts on. He took over in the Museum of San Carlos, and with his team, they did an incredible job. And so he really has been involved. He has the skill sets, and I must honor June, his wife, who is that strength of the family that supports him. He supports her. She is also a great volunteer for our city of San Carlos. So with that, again, it's a special honor. I joke Neil because if the nominating committee could have spelled his name about 10 or 15 years earlier, he would have won the award then. But Chicazola is a tough one to spell. But he got it, and you could treasure it for the rest of your life. Thank you very, very much. Citizen of the Year. Okay, item number 5. We have a special presentation from the League of California Cities. I believe Ron, who is a fellow council member from the city of Sunnyvale, welcome. And Ron, just for planning here, about how much time are you going to be needing here?
Let's see, which one are you going to do? Probably about 5-10 minutes.
Oh, wonderful. Great.
We'll try and get through this as quickly as possible. I know everyone will want to hear the information that we're about to give them.
Great. Well, please.
Okay?
Welcome.
Thank you. And I don't know about anybody else, but I've already turned in my blueprints for the ARC to our Planning Commission so that we can, because we got another storm coming in, so I don't want to take too long. I want to beat the storm going home. All right, let's see if we can get this to work. They said all we had to do, oh, this one up here. That one? Oop. There we go. Okay. Everybody's system's a little different. Anyway, over the last few years, cities across the state have celebrated many significant achievements in the state legislative arena and at the ballot box because of the partnership between the League and its member cities. This is how the League and Division work with cities to support local control, provide professional leading opportunities, and to prevent local revenue, to preserve local revenues. The Peninsula Division comprises of 36 cities in San Francisco, San Mateo, and Santa Clara counties. They strive to provide its members with information to assist in providing high-quality service to cities and their citizens. Regional divisions have been an integral and important part of the League since 1933. The division is a local level of the League, where divisions are as varied in their activities as in their locations. There are common core purposes: to promote interest in the problems of the municipal government and administration among the officers and the employees of cities within the division. Assist with officials of the League in formulating the policies and rendering services by expressing to the League recommendations of the regional division. To take action consistent with the general policies of the League as adopted by the General Assembly of the League of the Board of Directors of the League. Recent successes through the ballot process have brought cities into a position to halt state takeaways. Prior to the League's involvement, this was just not possible. The recent scrutinization of the agreement to replace funds taken by the state was created by the League to help keep cities whole. Proposition 1A was the first step in creating momentum to protect local revenues from the state takeaways to balance the state budget. In 2006, the No on 90 coalition ended up being one of the biggest and most diverse coalitions ever assembled to defeat a ballot measure. Groups that don't normally agree were united against Proposition 90. In total, more than 400 diverse organizations opposed Proposition 90. In 2008, the Proposition 98 and 99, a distinctive victory for eminent domain reform when the legislation was unable to create a solution for our cities. Regional public affairs managers played a critical role in the campaign from the beginning of organizing volunteers and signature gathering, public coalition, fundraising, organization, media events, and education, a wide range of community groups. Prop 90 failed in a landslide, and Prop 99 passed overwhelmingly with a healthy majority in every county except one. Last summer, we engaged in a budget campaign centered around the idea that legislation needed to be cut up the local government credit card. Over 170 resolutions and 140 letters from cities across the state borrowed more than 9 media events covered every market in California. All over the state, we received coverage. Countless newspaper articles and letters to the editor were written. Unfortunately, this was not stop the state from taking local revenues that support your local services. The state is continuing to raid local revenues to balance their budget. Local revenues need to fund local services.
So, Ron, you may just want to close that
Whoop.
one screen. Okay, there you go.
There we go. Revenues need to fund transit and roads. Redevelopment funds needed to create affordable housing and promote jobs. All are being taken, and some will be repaid, and some won't even be repaid. The state is borrowing to solve today's problems. But there are things that you and your citizens can do to protect local revenues. Past successes is going to the voters has shown that the way to stop the state is by enlisting the support of the voters. Plans are underway to protect the revenue that were not protected by the last proposition, and those may be at risk. Your city and your residents may make the difference. Join us by working with the League to qualify the initiative and help our community leaders understand the issues. Public officials and public members can contact our regional public affairs manager for additional information to help with the campaign and receive their 100 and 100 forms. Please remember that no public resources can be used to gather signatures or engage in other campaign activities. City officials matter. Get involved. Public officials and public members can contact our regional public affairs manager to assist and receive their 100 and 100 forms.
Just move your mouse around a little. I think it'll come back.
Oh, the Mercury News. All right. There we are. There we are.
It went to
I'm
sleep
sorry.
on you there.
Went to sleep on me. We ask you to get involved. Public officials and public members can contact our regional public affairs manager at that address and phone number and receive their 100 forms. And please remember that no public resources can be used to gather signatures or engage in other campaign activities. So thank you.
Ron, thank you very much for the time and your support here in helping with the League of California Cities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I did want to thank Ron for his leadership and for the good folks at the League of Cities. I think this is the 7th initiative that the League has taken on to try to preserve local funds for local governments. It's disappointing that we've got to engage in this time and time again, but appreciate your hard work and look forward to seeing you at some events soon.
Thank you. The other title I do wear is the president of the Peninsula Division
Absolutely.
Of the LCC. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate all your cooperation.
And you're welcome to beat the rain, or you're welcome to sit through another council meeting if you'd like.
Yeah, I've got one tomorrow night, so I'll pass.
Great, thank you.
Never have too much.
Okay, item 6 is public comment. This is where the public is welcome, and we encourage for anybody to speak on any item that's not on this evening's agenda. I have 2 speaker cards, but if anybody else would like to speak, let us know. Robert Stafford and Pat Bell, too. So, Pat, if you could be ready to go after Mr. Stafford, it'd be great. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Royce.
And again, if you could limit this to about 2 minutes there, I'll let you know.
Thank you, Robert
Okay, thank you.
Stafford. I think we're all here because we believe in San Carlos, and we're trying to come at it from different perspectives on how to preserve what's inherently good. Obviously, we need to work with what we have. What's missing from this conversation is any focus on the youth between 14 and 18. When I was a kid, you didn't dare come in this town and do anything wrong. I think it was Steve Jackson at that time was a law enforcement folk, and there was tight scrutiny. The youth had an interaction with the police that was healthy. Where are we today in trying to help out our youth? There's no skateboard park. There's no intervention to help. Dares being taken away. So one of the issues that we have to look at is old age, to some extent, is a series of reruns. Youth gets one shot. The IT department in this town could probably be sold out for 50 cents on the dollar. Parks, we have 9 parks. The major issue has been hurdled. The layers of management on parks is unacceptable. We need that money for the police. Brian Moore did a great job, and I think he's got a little wider scope coming up, and I'd really like to see what we can do with the few departments that aren't generating income. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Pat Bell?
Pat Bell, San Carlos. I just will add to what Bob said. In my neighborhood, the kids behave because they know that somebody else's mother will tattle on them if they don't behave. I was amazed when I moved there, and we had a group of junior high school boys who all hung out together, and they never did anything wrong. And I told one of the dads, and he said, that's because they know they get caught. So I think we all have to take responsibility for the 7th grade boys. Having lived through that year with my son, I can tell you it's not easy. What I really intended to talk about, though, is the change that Robert Weil has made in this town, at least for East Siders, and I think for the whole city. It's just been wonderful to watch him go through this process with the Holly 101 project, and I won't talk about that because that's on the agenda, but his outlook and his openness to the concerns of our neighborhood has been so refreshing, and he's very careful about making sure everything is studied and not just going off and saying, well, we have to do it this way. But he also listens to the concerns of the community, and I think that's so important. And he's gotten a whole bunch of grants to do things around here that we need doing. He's paying attention to the ADA requirements, and he's really made a huge change, I think.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Would anybody else like to speak this evening? Any items not on the agenda? Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 7, is the approval of the consent calendar. The consent calendar are items considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a member from council, staff, or public requests specific items to be removed for a separate action. With that, would anybody have any comments or any items on the
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the consent calendar items 7A through E.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Roll call.
Councilmember Mott?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Klein?
Yes.
Mayor Royce?
Yes. Okay, on item 8, reports to council, we actually have 2 this evening. The first will be from the police department, and then we will have Belmont San Carlos Fire. So with that, Chief Rothfuss, please join us. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Royce, members of the City Council. Greg Rothfuss, Police Chief. For each of the last 3 years, I presented a report to the council on issues regarding the police department, whatever the salient issues happen to be at the time. And so I'm doing so again this year. Really the top 3 issues with respect to the police department that are in the report that you have. Number 1 has to do with crime. The second issue is budget and fiscal issues. And then lastly has to do with respect to workload issues. So first we'll take the crime issues first and let you know that in 2009, San Carlos experienced a 25% increase in its Part 1 crime rates. We've had increases really across the board, and we took a look at all those to see what kind of whether or not there was any discernible pattern or specific cause for those. And we can tell you that really the answer, unfortunately, is no. They're across the board. They're across the days of the week. They're all over the community, and there really is no general area. So that was really a disturbing thing to find at year end. I can tell you that if there's some good news in that report, we've had higher crime levels in the past. For example, in 2005 and 2006, our crime levels were actually higher than that. But obviously at that time we had about a 20% higher staffing level of police officers to deal with that crime. You can also tell by, we do the benchmark study, we look at the other cities of Burlingame, Los Gatos, Belmont, and Foster City, and we can see that there's a couple of those cities that have a higher crime rate than we do, and there's a couple of those cities that have a less of a crime rate than we do. One of the concerns, obviously, is what is 2010 going to look like? And I can tell you, we don't have a crystal ball, and we can't tell you what next year is going to look like. One of the things that's actually, though, that is concerning and that will affect San Carlos is the state's plans for early prisoner releases. The good news on the early prisoner releases, if that goes forward, is I don't think they're going to apply to violent criminals, but they will apply to people who have a track record of drugs, drug possessions, drug sales, and a lot of theft offenses. We know that if we expect a large prisoner release like that the recidivism rate for state convicts is 70%. I believe that San Mateo County will be affected by that, and San Carlos will be affected by that as well. So the second issue I wanted to take a look at, or talk about, has to do with the budget and fiscal issues. As you know, the police department is a very large user of the general fund, so it certainly makes sense to see whether or not we're an efficient user of those dollars and how those dollars are being spent, and how do we stack up against other cities who also spend a lot of money on policing. What I can tell you with respect to, first of all, with respect to our staffing levels per thousand, I took a look at all the benchmark cities and found out that San Carlos has consistently staffed less sworn officers per capita than any of the benchmark cities, and less sworn officers per capita than really most of the cities in the area. So we have a very low staffing rate of sworn police officers for our community. The other thing that I found out, too, in doing the studies is that we continue to have one of the lowest per capita spending rates for police services than any of the benchmark cities. As you can tell, we're spending about $310 per capita for police services. All of the other benchmark cities are spending more than that, and most of the other cities around the area are also spending more than that. So the question is, then, how do we get our efficiencies, and why are we spending that? First, I think we've gained some efficiencies that have been good. At least fiscally, and I think even operationally, they've had value, in my opinion. Our relationship with communications with Menlo Park is working good. It was tough to have to lose that, but I believe they're doing a very good job for us with their dispatch services, and we're saving a considerable amount of money with that. The other issue is that we use non-sworn in the field to take reports, accident reports, and even crime reports to a much higher extent than other jurisdictions do. And we've taken a look at our benchmark cities there. We have some excellent non-sworn people who do a good job in the field, and they take reports, and they even take felony reports, and they do a great job. And we find efficiencies that way. The other way that, unfortunately, we found efficiencies is the low staffing levels. The budget issues have put us in a situation, our staffing levels are low in comparison to other cities. The last part of the report that I want to talk about has to do with the workload issues in terms of how much work we're doing and how our staff is set to cope with that workload. You can see from the benchmark report that in 2009 we made more arrests than any other of the cities in the benchmark cities, of our benchmark cities. We made over 1,000 arrests in 2009, and I think that's remarkable considering that we have a lower staffing rate per capita than the other. We've made more arrests per officer than any of the other benchmark cities. And I think another chart that we look at has to do with these bookings for under the influence and intoxication. We make an enormous amount of bookings into First Chance, which is a detoxification facility. When we arrest somebody for drunk driving or for public intoxication or for under the influence of drugs, those sorts of offenses, we take them into First Chance. They don't get booked into jail, and they begin, hopefully, a process of rehabilitation there. You can see from the report that we book more people into the First Chance facility, considerably more than our benchmark cities do. And interestingly, we book a lot more people into that facility than cities that are much larger than us. So what's going on with respect to San Carlos? There's a couple things. I can tell you qualitatively, we're a lot busier than people think we are. And quantitatively, we are busy on patrol, particularly on the weekend evenings. And I'll talk a little bit about what that created in terms of an issue for us as a department in a little bit. Well, actually, right now is a good time. I mean, we've got these workloads. We have these staffing levels that are about 1.1 per thousand. We have a lot of activity on weekend evenings, particularly at our local establishments. High arrest rates, high bookings into First Chance, and one of the things that I think it's been causing has been a disproportionate share in workload between us and our neighboring agencies. It's very common for us, for police departments, particularly on the peninsula and elsewhere, to cover each other when things are going on. We listen to each other's radio, and they call for assistance, and we respond, and vice versa. And what we found is that Redwood City is assisting us more than we're assisting them. And we also found is that Belmont assists us twice as much as we assist them. And so the concern there, when you look at our arrest rates and you look at our staffing rates, and you look at that, the question then becomes, are we overly dependent upon our neighboring jurisdictions to provide police services for us? And that is an important question for us to answer. I look at that, and I think that we are. And so when I see those outside assist ratios the way they are. The other issue to talk about is, with respect to the department, has to do with salary and overtime. As you know, we have a salary and overtime budget every year, and I provided some of those figures for you with respect to salary and overtime. We have exceeded our overtime budget in each of those years, and in some years more than others. But we have gone under with respect to general salaries on each of those years. And the bottom line is on each of those 3 years, we returned salary savings to the general fund on all of the 3 years. We took a look at what our average police officer makes here in San Carlos. Our average officer makes $76,000 a year in San Carlos. Our average officer makes about $19,000 a year in overtime in San Carlos for a total of about $95,000 a year. There's some officers that make less than that. There's some officers that make more than that. It depends upon whether or not what their seniority is, how much time they have in grade, or how much time they have on the department, and how much overtime they're working. Some officers, depending upon their shift, where the sicknesses and the injuries are, what their shifts are, they may be required to tap into to work some more of that overtime than other officers are, just by a nature of where they happen to be on the schedule. Some officers more willing to sign up for the overtime, and some officers maybe don't voluntarily sign up for the overtime. But I can tell you this with respect to those overtime figures is certainly not all of that overtime is voluntary. A lot of our officers work overtime because they're directed to. They're told to. They're called up at home. They're told to stay at the end of their shifts because we don't have anybody else to fill the slot, and we have to fill the slot. We have to have the bodies on the street. So a lot of the overtime isn't out of a desire of the officers to make the money. It's out of the need of the department to fill that shift. And in many cases, it's done with somebody who's been directed to be there. Then I took a look and broke down the patrol overtime chart. You can see pretty much where we're spending our overtime in what areas. Our officers, attend training. They go to classes. At times they're sick or injured. They may be off on family leave. And there's a variety of drivers with respect to overtime, the vacation and time off that has to be replaced. And so these are kind of the factors. This biggest slice of the pie has to do with the staffing, about people are on vacation or on comp time or those kinds of things. We intend to work to divide that up a little more and with a little more specificity for the future. So that's pretty much the report that I have right now, and I'd be glad to take any questions.
Okay. I only have one speaker card. Do you want to take public comment first here, and then
Whatever works for you.
questions?
I think public comment first would make more sense.
Yeah, why don't we take that first? So, Chief, we have one speaker card, Ken Castle. Why don't we get Ken up here and get any questions or comments that Ken has, and then we'll open it up to City Council. Welcome, Ken.
Good evening, Mayor Royce and members of council. I'm Ken Castle with White Oaks Neighborhood Watch. I think that we need to take heart and look at the police chief's report. This is very worrisome to us. I know that in White Oaks we had quite a number of burglaries over the holidays. I stepped out of my house on Sunday to walk my dogs and found that 5 houses away from me, a police officer was taking a report on an attempted burglary. This crime is becoming pervasive in this city. I don't know whether it's the recession or whether it is the word being on the street that San Carlos has a small contingent of police officers, but it's greatly worrisome. And I think that as we move ahead with these budget discussions to see how we can save money and make up the expected deficit, we have to look very carefully at public safety. Honestly, the officers are, many of them, close to a breaking point at some times when we have a couple of armed robberies in one night, a whole bunch of things going on, and it's kind of like whack-a-mole. Every time you try to whack one down, as Omar likes to refer to it, something else pops up. And I think that we have reached a point where we cannot adequately police the city with the staffing that we have. I think that we are going to find some human issues, and I think we're looking for a major incident to happen, and we're not going to be able to deal with it. And the idea of being able to ask for backup aid from the neighboring communities, that's going to run very thin. We're really going to the well too often to ask Belmont and Redwood City and other agencies to come to our support when they know that we are chronically and consistently short of the officers that we need to have. Anyway, I would urge you to, at some point, do a deep dive into this a little bit more and see what the community feels about this and what we might be able to do to increase the number of officers on the street and the opportunity to fight crime in the city. Thank you.
Ken, thank you very much. And thank you for all your efforts and work in the White Oaks area on communication and in bringing that whole organization and neighborhood together. Thank you. Okay, maybe start on my right here.
Okay.
Mr. Klein, any
yes.
questions? Or?
I have 2 questions for the chief. Chief, you list that there was a 25% uptick in crime from last year to this year. But looking on your graph, in 2005 and 2006, there were more crimes than there were this year, or more Part 1 crimes.
Correct.
So I'm wondering, is it really a huge increase, or are we just leveling out to normal again? And we just had 2 really good years in 2007, 2008?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's the question, depending on how you want to look at it. We certainly had a 25% increase in Part 1 crimes from last year. I mean, we can certainly say that. But as I pointed out in the report, there was some good news in that our crime was higher in 2005 and 2006. But the difference is we have 20% fewer officers to deal with the same crime level now. And so that puts us in a very different situation in terms of policing that level of crime.
Yeah, so, and with that, it's almost, I know you're not trying to say this, but I can see how someone would misconstrue that. It's almost that the crime rate isn't indicative of how many cops we have on staff. It's just whether you can police the crimes, right? That's what we're talking about?
Say that again?
Well, we had more crimes in 2005, 2006 when we had more police officers on the street, and we have less police officers on the street now and less crime. Are you finding that, because I know most of these crimes you can't prevent. You can't prevent domestic assault. You're not going to sit in someone's kitchen. I get that, but what is the real, I mean, we're looking at numbers, but what is really going on? I mean, are we finding that we're able to prevent less crimes, or are we finding that we're not able to police them and see them through and making sure someone gets prosecuted?
I mean, there's a couple things. First of all, I'm not trying to draw any correlations at all between that, staffing levels, or anything like that. I'm just pointing out what the facts are with respect to that. In terms of trying to explain exactly why it's happening, or even exactly why crime goes up and down in the United States, I think criminologists will debate that and disagree about that, and they're doing so right now. Some major cities have seen actually a decrease in crime, and there's a debate about why that's happening. And why it's going up and down in San Carlos, why it goes up and down the way it does, is it's hard for me to exactly pinpoint. We tried to through an analysis of the crime and found that we really couldn't find a specific reason. We take burglaries, for example. All over town, day and night, we've had some very bold burglaries, Saturday daytime burglaries where people are going in through the front window, to anything from more kind of burglaries where looks like some kid broke in to steal his buddy's Nintendo games, and everything in between without any discernible pattern. So I don't have any answers about the exact reasons why.
Okay. And then my last question is, reading in your report, you mentioned that our current imbalance occurs mostly on weekend nights due to our bars. And again, probably as the only council member who frequents a lot of these bars, I understand that a lot of the time, even if you're not looking for trouble, trouble happens. But I go to these bars and I realize a lot of them are understaffed. They don't have proper volume control. They don't have proper rules about, when someone is just too drunk. And it seems like they are passing the buck on our police department instead of hiring proper bouncers and really, regulating how much alcohol is served. So I just think it's pretty bad that we have to foot the bill for that. I went to a school in Montana where we had the highest per capita rate of bars per person, I think, outside of Boston. And there was rules. You got one freebie on a weekend if you were a bar. The police had to come back and it became a recurring event. You were fined. Your bouncers were fined, and you were fined to the point where it was cheaper to hire more security than it was to pay the fine. And I just think our police officers have better things to do with their time than patrol the bars. So I'm wondering, is there any way we can look into that?
Well, first of all, let me tell you what we did before as these bars came open. We met with the owners of these bars, and we talked and tried to work with them on some conditions that we felt would help make it so that they could have a thriving and successful business and simultaneously would not create unnecessary demand on the police department. We've been fortunate enough to have an officer on staff who has connections with the alcoholic beverage control. So we've had ABC agents down here working. We probably did that more through knowing the right people than making the phone calls, because ABC doesn't really have anybody anymore. But we were able to get them down here and to work and to do some stuff like that. We've met with the owners, and we set some conditions with respect to bouncers and security and conditions, and at times it's been helpful. But what we found lately is that there is some slippage and there's some problems. And so we're currently setting up meetings with Community Development Department. I know staff has been in contact with Al Savay to talk about what we can do, what leverage points we currently have in the Muni Code, and we do have some. And if we don't, what leverage points we could bring into the Muni Code to give us some leverage as a city to make these establishments be able to go ahead and have a successful and thriving business in San Carlos, which I know we all want, but simultaneously not create this unnecessary demand on a low-staffed police department.
Okay, well, I definitely, I would like to see something done with that. I have, personal experience. The night before Thanksgiving is probably the craziest night in town. And one of our bars, instead of hiring a second bouncer, locked their back door. And, I mean, come on. They're at some point spend the money, get the safety going, but, they are passing the buck on to us, and I don't think we're in the job of subsidizing people for bad behavior. So I would like you to see it looked at, and I guess we could talk about it as another council meeting, but I just think that with where we are in staff right now, we need to protect our citizens and not protect businesses that let things get a little out of control.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well, before we move on, our newest member has some really good experience here I wasn't even aware of. So, wow, you're going to be able to help out a lot.
Well, I probably can't go to these places anymore, so.
Or maybe best, maybe I should try to get experience this weekend. I don't know. Mr. Ahmad.
At least we know where the party is. Chief, appreciate the good work. I was curious, looking at the arrest rates, do we count first chance bookings as arrests?
We do.
We do. And so I am looking at, we do a lot of first chance bookings. So I know that Councilmember Klein has spoken quite a bit about this. I would just echo to the mayor that it would be interesting, if not to agendize or at some point even talk during one of the retreats. And I'm looking at Mr. Savay. We do want to encourage our nightlife in the downtown area. We don't want to be overly oppressive. We want a thriving dining community. But to Councilman Klein's points, if it's coming out of the police budget, we need to take a hard look at that. One question I was curious about, we do show an increase in crime this year. You have a number of benchmark cities. Did the other cities see a corresponding increase in their crime this year?
Belmont did. I know they did. They have some increase too, not as much as we did. And then we did not look at the other cities to see what they had in terms of their increases and what their 5-year patterns were. But I know our neighbor to the north has seen an increase as well. And also with respect to the first chance numbers and what you're seeing with respect to arrest stats and first chance, I think it's unfair. I don't want to leave a position that somehow it's the businesses and the nightlife that in the San Carlos that is solely responsible for those numbers. There is other issues that are responsible. I think one of the issues that's responsible for those numbers is we happen to have, and I can say this because I've worked in 2 or 3 other police departments, is we have a very proactive police department. Our officers are very proactive, and a lot of those arrests have to do with officers being out there, working patrol, seeing the activity, initiating contacts, and those sorts of things. One of the troubles I think I have in my job or in policing is that I can provide you these stats and I can provide you these numbers, and they represent a large number. In my business, success is often measured on what doesn't happen. And when you book almost 200 people into the First Chance Detoxification Facility, and you make over 1,000 arrests a year, which is much more than the other jurisdictions, then the question becomes what didn't happen as a result of the proactive position of the department and the proactive nature of our officers. So those numbers reflect something that I feel that this agency and the city can be proud of, and that's the proactive posture our officers have in protecting the public.
Without question, Chief. And it's a very good point. The only thing I would add, Mr. Mayor, these are, you can see that there are a number of questions that are coming out for the chief about this, and there's going to be a great deal of interest in these numbers. It may be worthwhile to have this type of report a little more frequently than annually. I might recommend that we look at getting these types of reports a little bit more frequently.
I'd be happy to do that.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Grocott?
Sure. A couple questions and a couple comments. I know at one time you had mentioned about as we do economic development and put things in that can have an impact on the police department, and just like you don't want to pick on the nightlife necessarily, my question is the theft which is in part of the Part 1 crimes. We've had some changes in town, addition of the marketplace and so forth, and I've actually witnessed some activity out there with the police department. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I don't really have specific numbers, but what I can tell you is those places do keep us busy at times. We had the armed robbery at Best Buy over the weekend. We've had some thefts out of that over the holidays. We've had some thefts out of there. We have quite a few businesses that have popped up there, and they add to our workload. And I haven't separated those out, but I could, for a future presentation, separate out what kind of workload they have put. But, the development issue is a good one. When we talk about development, I think one of the things the staff report points to is not the past, but talks about what we need to do in the future. And when you talk about development, we're talking about the transit village potential, what's going to happen with the old Foodville location and what that turns into. I think it's important to realize what our staffing levels are and where our department sits right now. and how can we work to be equipped to deal with whatever new development comes in. But I can break those numbers out for you in the future, or send those to the council here shortly.
And then two follow-up questions, or two more questions in that same line of thought. And where I'm coming from is, we make decisions about land use and economic development, and then that has an impact on our police force. It has an impact on a lot of things, but obviously, we're looking at this tonight. And so the other thing I think about is Laurel Street, and we've done great at restaurants, and you've mentioned bars. So because a lot of the talk earlier was about bars, is there any similar impact with restaurants? Restaurants, of course, serve alcohol, and it also adds just to the activity of the nightlife. And I'm not asking this question to pick on those things, but the reason I'm asking is because as we make decisions about things on land use, it's good to have some education from you on what are some of the ramifications of that. You get the bonus of added economic activity, but you also get the downside, I guess.
Right. And, it's a question with respect to the alcohol. Yeah, I think when we bring establishments in that are going to serve alcohol, particularly ones that are on sale, hard liquor and beer and wine, I think that we have to consider whether, what the impact of that's going to be, what its location is going to be, and all of that. I mean, what we do see is downtown is nightlife kind of starts at some of the restaurants, and people go to the restaurants and they have a good time and they hang out there, and then it goes into the other bars in town that are not restaurants, and that's when problems sometimes start there later. So I think we do have to monitor and understand that that bringing in alcohol permits into San Carlos can have consequences for us. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. It just means it should be a consideration, and offsets and ways to deal with that should be considered as well.
So I suppose it's a discussion for another time, but I don't know what the tie-in is to use permits. The issue that Mr. Klein was talking about, how often do things happen at these locations? Do we keep track of that and tie it into a use permit type thing? So you have some teeth in what you're doing to enforce. Third question is, I've noticed a lot of activity in the industrial side. Does the economy that we're in and the fact that there are a lot of empty buildings on the east side have any impact to that? You see any correlation there?
Not really with respect to empty buildings. I couldn't say that. I think people are usually going after stuff that's there. Maybe they don't know until they get in there. But we are seeing an increase, like I said, across the board in terms of burglaries and thefts and those types of offenses, and stolen vehicles too. And we're seeing a lot of that in the industrial area. Mm-hmm. And that's usually stuff that goes on at night when people are asleep and they don't see it, because those kinds of offenses occur when people are asleep. But our night shift deals with those kinds of offenses regularly.
And I have noticed, it's not in your report here as specifically, but I've noticed, looks like an uptick in, and I'll ask you, is it because of a proactive force, police force, of stopping people driving, finding out they don't have a license or insurance, et cetera? Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on?
Well, yeah, I mean, the arrests that we show reflect traffic arrests and other in custody arrests. So it's really, we're seeing increase across the board. Proactive traffic enforcement, which we do when we have the time, is enabled. Then we do end up getting more types of traffic citations and misdemeanor traffic arrests, which could be unlicensed drivers and that sort of thing. So I think we probably will see a proportional increase in those offenses as well with our proactive enforcement.
Okay. And then my last question is just to understand this graph. There's one here that has the per capita. Let me turn back to it. So on page 4, you give staffing per capita, and then you give budget per capita. And one thing I notice, I'm curious about, and maybe you're not prepared right now to answer this, but I'll just ask it, and if I don't get an answer now, maybe we can talk later. But
Absolutely.
with our per capita of officers is 11, and yet when you compare us to...
It's 1.1, Councilman Grocott.
Oh, I don't have my glasses, so that's 1.1, so that's 1.25 and 1.4. Okay. Well, it doesn't exactly matter because I'm looking more at the graph than the actual figure. But when you compare that then to the budgets are pretty close for those first 4 departments, San Carlos through Burlingame, and then Los Gatos kind of stands on its own in both cases. And so what my question is we have such a low staffing level, but then our budget is so close to the same, really, to these other departments.
It really is. It's really just a scale issue. If you look at
Yeah.
the graphs, and you can see on the graphs on the per capita one, the graph on per capita, it starts at 1. That's the baseline. So it allows you to show as you move up from 1 to 2 a big disparity in the bars there. You can see that.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the bottom graph, it starts with a baseline of 0 and it goes up to like
I see.
600. So it's
I
just
see.
scaling. It's more of a scaling thing.
Okay.
But I mean, there's a difference, I think, in this case. I don't have my glasses on either, but of about, about $17 per capita with Burlingame. That's the smallest difference, and the other one being with Los Gatos. So.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, because just looking at the graph, it didn't look quite right, and I wanted to clarify. Thank you very much.
Great. Mr. Griselli.
I think everybody's really, the other gentlemen have asked a lot of the questions that I might have had. A little bit of a comment. I mean, I think everybody has to realize that if we had 500 officers here every single night, there would still be crime, because there's going to be crime. And I think the citizens of San Carlos have to realize that it's important how many officers we have on duty, but it's also incumbent upon people to understand that they have to take care of themselves in some of this. Now, some of these capital crimes, I'm not trying to imply it at all, but everybody has to be alert. As Ken has started his neighborhood watch down in White Oaks, there may be other areas doing the same thing. Everybody's got to be on alert here. Everybody's got to work in concert with your department. We can't possibly rely on you all, because it's impossible, and I don't know if you'd agree or disagree with that, but I think it's a community effort that we all have to pitch in on this.
I definitely agree. We have to have a partnership. We have to work with the community. They can't do it without us. We can't do it without them.
Right.
We've been blessed by the participation of the White Oaks neighborhood and other neighborhoods, and we hope that continues and that grows.
Yeah, but I really want to emphasize that, because you can throw numbers around and do statistics and all the rest of it, but for the most part, we've also got to be aware of our surroundings and our situations, and things are going to happen. Unfortunately, it's our society today. It's been our society for a number of years. I mean, things are going to happen, and we certainly want to rely on our public safety folks. Chief Fry is going to follow you with a report. We want to rely on our police and our fire people that are doing a great job, as far as I'm concerned. But we've also got to all realize that we've got to help ourselves. I just wanted to make that comment to your points.
Anything else?
That's it.
Yeah. So, Chief, I have 2 items. One, be very quickly on, because it'll sound petty, but the solicitors item slide kind of reminded me, and in my social and also just talking to citizens, this is one of 2 areas, this and stealing of recyclables. I see some of our people from that business in the audience too. Just gets a lot of attention in town. We do get a lot of solicitors, and you and I know that we haven't had a permit taken out for the last 4 years in the city of San Carlos. So we know they don't have a permit, and we also know, quite bluntly, there are some very scary solicitors that are knocking on our doors. And you get a call, on most days in San Carlos, the actual arrest, I believe that's a citation.
It's a citation, yes.
That's a citation. We do have in our ordinance, it's a $100 first offense, going to $200, going to $500, but we're only citing about 1 out of 10 phone calls. Now, whether or not we don't catch the people or whatever, but also recyclables, the same sort of thing. We have one person, if you go out at 10 o'clock at night, she's there on most recycle nights, and I hear this throughout San Carlos. So again, I feel ridiculous here because they're so petty, but it's
it's making phone calls, it's taking a lot of your time. Do we need to be more aggressive in fining, the amount of the fine and the frequency of the fine? I mean, how do we, or do we turn our back and say, we're just not going to fool with these two areas? I think the way it is now, people talk about it, and I think we need to do something one way or the other with solicitation and stealing of recyclables in our city. What's your recommendation?
Well, I think you're right. People will say that they sound petty. In my opinion, illegal solicitors are not petty. I think illegal solicitors represent a potential danger to the resident who opens the door for them.
Yep.
That's been my experience in other cities and other communities. I think sometimes people who go door to door to solicit are sometimes casing, and or they're opportunistic, and they'll do what they need to do at a house. And we've seen some minor crimes occur from illegal soliciting, and we've seen some heinous crimes occur from illegal soliciting. So we have an ordinance, people call, and our position is pretty aggressive in the city to find these people and to cite them when we can, and we take their property, we've taken their money, we've taken their books, and we've taken everything that they have on them. And I think we have a more assertive and aggressive posture with respect to illegal solicitors than a lot of other agencies do. And so, we've done some things already. We've been out on our webpage to discourage it. We've put that on television to discourage it. I believe we've even put it in the Parks and Rec bulletin to make sure people know that they need to call us when they see something like that. What you see is maybe a low citation, a low arrest rate. Sometimes we don't see them do it in the act. We're not able to find them. Or in one case, when I had one come to my door and I called, it was the officers were busy on another call. They were dealing with a major car accident, and they were not able to respond. And so the legal soliciting people should call, but they need to understand that if we're busy, we're not going to be able to get to that. That it's more of a third priority type of a call. And so what you see by low arrest or citation rates is maybe it's taken us a while to get there because we're busy. We're unable to find the person, but our citations are going up with that, and our staff, they find them, they cite them. We're going to be talking about municipal code and how it might work for us with respect to handling nightlife, and so we can certainly take your suggestion to say, hey, is there anything else we can do to beef up the fines and our penalties for illegal solicitation? So when we do that, we'll incorporate that thought as well.
Super, thank you. And my second item is not petty. It deals with just the trend, and I've talked about this before I went back and looked at our 10 years of data, and I think most people know, starting with the year 2000, which was kind of the start of the dot-com bust, our revenues really dipped quite a bit, and for the last 10 years since then, our revenues have been very, very mild, 2 to 3 to 4%. More currently, there's 0%. Our revenue growth is been flat. If we look at safety, it's about 38% over those 10 years, about 4% per year. We also know more specifically, if we get to the last couple of years, it's more like 7 or 8%. I'm speaking about total safety. One of the things that I'm most concerned is the comment that we had 20% more officers 3 years ago. 3 years ago, meaning the year ended 06, 05 and 06. The report's going to 09, so about over 4 years, I guess. And so to take it the other way, you can almost say mathematically, we have 20% less people, but yet our expense growth, and of course there's some restated numbers, but I've calculated about a 16%, about a 4% per growth for police. We know that number has grown more like 8% from 07 to, from the year ended 08 to 09, now from 09 to our budgeted. So we have 20% less people, but we're growing significantly. And it relates a little bit maybe to Matt's question or Councilmember Grocot's on the expenses. Overtime's a big issue. I think just 3 years ago we had budgeted $277K. And last year we actually spent, I think, about $470. Now we're up $520K. I mean, we are twice the amount of overtime cost, $500,000. but that's twice as much as what we thought and what we budgeted only 2 years ago. So I am very satisfied with the level of service. I know how hard you and your people are working. We still have a safe town. I think Mr. Castle, Ken Castle may disagree with me a little bit. I think it has increased, but it's still a heck of a place to live in a very, very safe town. But being a guy with a little bit of a financial background, I'm wanting to dive into this. And why I want to dive into this is this growth has been going on for 8 or 9 years, and our revenue since the dot-com bust has been minimal. I mean, this is not new. This is not something that's happened in the last year or two. And I would recommend and would like to get council's approval to, I guess the one organized group we do have, which Mr. Ahmad and I started last year, was a finance committee with staff and Mr. Ahmad and myself to maybe take a first stab trying to understand overtime. We know overtime's it's a very complicated area. You're talking about levels of service and all the other things that you have in this report. But we do need to look at opportunities on how we could bring our cost growth down for police. Now, I'm speaking about police in a climate where we have no revenue growth. And there may be opportunities, there may not, but I have not seen the financial data provided in any detail to council, and I would like to step in and do a little micromanaging just because it's so critical. It's a big number. It's $8 to $9 million. It's our biggest piece for the city, and it's growing the fastest. So rather than wait until budget time and just make decisions on cuts, I would like to understand it a lot better. So with that, maybe I could refer to Mr. Ahmad, who served on the Finance Committee, if you have any thoughts on that.
Mr. Mayor, I would support any fiscal investigation you'd like to do. I do recognize that this discussion that we're having is straying from the agenda item, so I may refer that
Thank you.
to a later time.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you. And with that, any other thoughts, comments? Chief, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Other Chief,
Good evening,
welcome.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Doug Fry, Fire Chief, Belmont San
Belmont
Carlos Fire.
San Carlos.
I also give you folks annual quarterly updates in regards to what's going on within the fire department, and this is something that's been relatively new for the last couple of years, so we try and you get the more regularly fixed updates from me on what's happening within the agency. Probably the one thing that has occurred most recently is Mr. Klein stated as he was elected as the chair of the Fire Commission last week, and Mr. Lieberman from Belmont has been elected as the vice chair. And so we'll be moving forward with some actions next month. As you see in my report, there's a number of different items that I gave to you. Most specifically, we did receive another grant. The 4 agencies, Menlo Park Fire, Woodside Fire, Redwood City Fire, and ourselves submitted to FEMA for a grant for $176,000 to upgrade our radio infrastructure. I've had discussions with you in the past regarding the narrow banding piece that's coming into play by 2013, which means we will need to be changing out our radios and our frequencies to meet the new FCC requirements. We received, our portion of the grant was $47,000 of that $176,000, which will allow us to take care of our mobile radio fleet within the organization, so we'll be right on target with that. We have a $9,000 matching fund that goes with that, and we've budgeted for that within the budget, so we'll be moving forward. We're in the process right now of getting bids for those radios and the installation of that. Most recently, too, we received another $64,500 from the Environmental Protection Agency from some regulatory issues that are occurring, and we were informed that we need to spend that specifically on fire department-related equipment for emergency response. So we'll be completing the other half of our portable radio upgrade with that piece and complete the safety gear requirements that we need, that we have in play for the new personnel that we've hired and for the balance of the department. So, again, this month, another $112,000 from grants from within the agency. The second grant does not have a matching fund, so we will have that full 164 to, or that full 64,000 rather, to deal with in regards to that. I had a number of retirements over the last several months. I had noted in there that with just a handful of members that retired, we lost 165 years of fire service experience within the department. So certainly our more senior people are leaving and moving on to other things. And I did give you a large amount of information in regards to what is going on with our Fire Prevention Bureau and some of the activities. And I think it's interesting to note that last year alone, we trained 120 new CERT members in the two communities, which brings our numbers up now to over 600 new CERT members. We have 3 more classes scheduled for this year already, and all of them have 25 or more in each of those signed up. So we're really rapidly growing that concept, and certainly with the homeowners associations like the White Oaks and the Greater East Side, there's a lot of activity that we're looking forward to going through over the next several months. I will leave the rest of the report for you, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything you have at this time.
Okay, again, I have one speaker card. Ken Castle would like to speak on this topic. Ken?
Once again, Ken Castle from White Oaks. I think we need to have another deep dive into this situation that we have with public safety and the fire department. I think last week was the week from hell for the fire department. We had not only the floods and the accidents, we had a fatal fire. And one of the things that came to my attention that absolutely alarms me is that we have a fire station here with a truck unit sitting in that has no firefighting capability, no water, no pumps, no hose. And we are rolling this unit as a first response vehicle to calls that come in the north and central part of the city. With the kind of staffing that we've had, the cutbacks in the past, it's amazing to me that we're sending this big truck out on medical calls, on all kinds of calls, when it really isn't set up to be a first responder unit. I know in the old days we used to have both a pump truck and a ladder truck, but under this joint agreement arrangement with Belmont, apparently it's our turn this year to host the truck unit, which means that's the only unit we have in Engine Company 13, which means there really is no firefighting capability until a second unit arrives from another station with a pump truck. I think that's really an alarming situation because it puts a large part of this town in jeopardy, and with more time to be spent waiting for the appropriate units to arrive. I think we really need to take a look at whether or not this is the right kind of deployment that we should have, or whether we really should be opening up or reopening another station, having that truck in the other station, hiring another crew, and having firefighting capability out of both of our stations. And we certainly shouldn't be cutting back on any stations. So I hope that at some point you would have a study session on this. Let's do a deep dive into it. I agree we need to look at what is causing the cost to go up each year, but I think we need to know whether those are operational costs. I mean, we certainly can't put a cap on events. There's no way we can control that. Or whether the costs have to do with perhaps some retirement benefits or other things, contributions that the city needs to make or needs to catch up on. And let's take a look at that and make it really clear to the public whether or not these added costs relate to those kinds of issues. But I do think we need to review whether or not, under the current situation, which I think is intolerable, that we're going to continue to have a station with no firefighting capability. Thank you.
Great, thank you. With that, comments from council, questions? Mr. Grocott?
Sure, I have a few questions. First, I'll start with what Mr. Castle referred to. Number one, regarding the equipment of having a fire truck sometimes and having a fire engine other times. That's why when we put the department back together back in 2005, we immediately started talking to the chief about cross-staffing a company whereby you could have both pieces of equipment in the station. Now that seems to be a little bit too complex to manage something like that, and I don't. From my discussions that I've had, even with firefighters, it's not something that they endear themselves to because they feel like it's a safety issue for them in their work. And you can correct me on any of that, Chief, feel free. But the other thing that we've looked at for the future is when that truck needs replacement, possibly not going with a truck like what we have and using a Quint vehicle. And at the time where we study that, and I would agree with Mr. Castle, it's something we need to dive into and get more educated on as a council and really study the issue. But I'm sure the chief could provide us information on that type of vehicle and how it's staffed and what it can provide for us. But you're exactly right. The truck is just it's a big toolbox basically. That's where they keep all their tools. Question I had also refers a little bit to what Mr. Castle was talking about, costs going up, and they have gone up. But could you tell us, Chief, how much that, in percentage-wise, maybe I'm putting you on the spot too much, but is attributable to two things: overtime, which some of that overtime is responding to the state and wildfires, and you put that in your report, the $400,000. But also, we had asked the department to pay down its side fund and take care of its retirement, actually at a faster rate than the city of San Carlos is doing because of the GASB 45 rulings and what we see coming down the pike, where GASB 45 asks us to put that in our ledger as an expense or as a deficit. And there's legislation coming down the pike probably that's going to tell us we have to pay it down at a certain rate, and we were getting ahead of that by starting to pay it down. Could you comment on that?
We have two things. When the department reorganized back in 2005, there was, as with most cities, an unfunded liability that fell within the PERS purview of the retirement system. That obligation for the fire department was about $13 million. In 2006, the fire board made a conscious effort to begin paying that down and took a loan essentially through PERS, and we make an annual payment to PERS of $1.3 million on a 10-year loan to pay that down. We've been paying on that for about 3 years. We're chipping away at that piece. It was a huge dollar amount that was in there. Additionally, as Mr. Grocott mentioned, the GASB 45, which is the other post-employment retirement benefits, we were told by the government that we need to mandate payments into that, either into a pay-as-you-go or fully fund it. We saw some reductions in our workers' comp costs, and we took the reduction in our workers' comp costs and transferred that over to pay 100% of our GASB 45 or the other post-employment benefits, which is roughly $351,000 a year to pay that down. We are chipping away at those things. Those are a big number within our budget. If you look at the fire department budget, 32% of our PERS rate is unfunded liability. And that's going to be with us for a few more years, but we are making an effort to take care of that and make that go away. Not that it will ever go away because of what the state's doing, but I think smaller chunks are easier to deal with in the future than a big number that sits out there now. So your board, the members of your board did take, I think, the appropriate action a few years ago to try and rectify that issue. None of us could have planned what was going on today, but we are making an effort to take care of that, and that's why when you look in our budget, the retirement piece is such a big piece of that pie.
A couple more questions, if I may. Regarding item number 3 about new firefighters and item 4 retirement, when we did create the Belmont San Carlos Fire Department, we also instituted a different funding, or a different retirement formula. Instead of being 3 at 50, we were at 3 at 55 as a way to get some savings and be able to go forward with the department at an affordable rate. What percentage now do we have of new firefighters, do you think, to the old retirement system? Do we know where we are now?
We're about 40%. With the 5 that just came on, we had all the retirements plus some vacancies that have occurred. We're right about 40% of the department now is under the new funding, the new retirement tier. Existing employees that were here prior to 2007 are under the old system. New employees are under the new 3 at 55. And so we are beginning to see that shift and that adjustment within the budget as far as our contributions goes. that number is starting to reduce. It's starting to almost balance out to 50-50 as far as what our payments are to those pieces. So I think we're actually seeing that trend sooner than we thought. I think as we go forward in the future, it'll be even more obvious, but it is a nice piece to see. There, as you recall, the new employees come in at a 17% range, and so they're not paying on that unfunded liability at all. They're on a totally separate piece of that, and that's absorbed within there.
And then the last question I have does regard retirement also. I remember when I first came on the fire board, we were dealing with people who were going out in retirement, and then it just seemed like we had a lot of claims for disability and that sort of thing. Are we finding a different trend now?
It's amazing. This is the first group that's gone out on just a straight regular retirement. When I came in, as we had this discussion when you were on the board, there was 11 people on disability that had disability retirement claims in. We worked through those processes and reduced all those, and eventually got them to retire and got them off the books. But all of these last few that have gone out have all been what we consider a clear retirement, where there's been no disability piece attached to that, at least from their service level leaving the department. So that is really a good position for us to be in, because so much of the time, as we were going through the disorganization and changing of the department back in '05, there was a lot of people that took that exodus route and really did cost the department a considerable amount of money.
Well, thank you, Chief, and I think you're doing a great job as the chief of the department. Thank you very much.
Mr. Maselli?
I don't have any questions, Chief. Fortunately, having been on the board for 4 years, we've gone over, you and I have had a lot of conversations on many of these things. So I'm fairly well up to speed on all this, and there's obviously more work to be done. We've got a difficult time right now with our budget and everything else, and I think you mentioned some of the items that we've instituted in past years about paying off unfunded liabilities and also setting up reserves for equipment that we didn't have either. Unfortunately, when we come to this budget cycle, we may have to look at those very, very hard to see how we're going to be able to pay our way. But other than that, again, echoing Mr. Grocott, appreciate all the work that the firefighters do every day for us. Thank you.
Video over here?
Do you want me to go first, or you, Councilman?
Whoever.
You look ready.
I'm going when I'm ready. Chief, appreciate your good work on all of this. Quick question. I think everybody, I don't know where you'd have to be living if you didn't hear what happened in Haiti. We are engaged in getting some new radios. I know that everybody's concerned about first responders and safety personnel being able to continue communications in an emergency. Can you very briefly explain how these new radios may help in that type of situation?
Well, the new radios actually give us more range for frequency. As you know, the fire departments throughout the county, we've built a system to where most all of the agencies own all of the radio equipment and the infrastructure within the county. So we've worked really hard to make sure that we have a system that's in place to be able to communicate not only locally here, but throughout the state. So we have systems in place. We, under our existing system that we have, that will become redundant very quickly over the next couple of years. As cable TV comes in, and that's part of the reason that we're having to go to this change, is the FCC sold some of our bandwidth to cable television, and they're utilizing that frequency range, and so ours has narrowed down to a smaller window of space for us to utilize. And so though we're not going into what's considered the larger megahertz system like the 700 or 800 systems that you hear discussed through the PDs and some of the other agencies, we will have that capability to communicate with those agencies with these radios. These radios will be pre-programmed with every single fire frequency within the state, and no matter where we go, we'll be able to communicate from one end of the state to the other to deal with that.
Great to hear. Chief, last thing, it's not obviously in this report, but we did have a tragedy occur just a little while ago, and I realize that the media has limited column inches in which to describe what happened. So I do want to express appreciation and gratitude to all the men and women who responded so professionally. But I also wanted to give you an opportunity, if you wanted to speak directly to the public, about anything you would publicly like to state about that issue.
I think I will just comment that you have a very brave group of firefighters that work for this organization. They put their life above all else, and there was very valiant efforts in rescues that occurred at that location. The rescue of two women, and those types of events don't occur very often. But that's what my firefighters and fire officers train for every day. And they did just a phenomenal job, and you should be very proud of your firefighting forces within these two cities and the good hard work and the efforts that they put forth for everyone that lives here.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chief. A couple things I think that should be noted. The chief and your fire department, you've done very well getting grants and trying to minimize our costs whenever possible. So thank you for that. And then the other thing, I don't know if you mentioned it. I may have tuned out, which I shouldn't do. But you mentioned, number 3, we have hired 5 new firefighters. How long has it been since our fire department's been fully staffed?
I think last century. It's been some time since we've been fully staffed. I don't actually recall in recent time. I know that we haven't been fully staffed since I've been the chief, but I think it's probably been at least 10 years since we've seen that. And you have a very well-rounded group of new firefighters coming here. They're very excited and looking forward to being part of this community. So I think we'll be able to move forward and do some of the things we haven't been able to do. Again, that is part of the high number in overtime that we have within the agencies, because not only did we have 5 vacant positions, but we're also covering vacations and sick leaves and injuries and those types of things, as Chief Roth has mentioned. And those have an impact on the day-to-day operations. So, and as we had in 2008, over 4,100 hours of time that we had crews assisting the state of California somewhere other than here, that we had to backfill a fire station for several weeks to offset that. Even though we were reimbursed, we have the firefighters and the fire captains filling those gaps. So it's a big piece that we're really trying to whittle away at and see if we can make a difference, especially with the new retirement, 2-tier retirement piece, that we should see some relaxation in that.
Okay, thank you, Chief. That's all I had.
Yeah, Chief Wright, thank you very much for your report and your time and helping us with these questions here. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, on to public hearing. Our first item is consideration of comments. All person interested in proposed amendments of our Chapter 18.200, which is the below market rate housing program, including the addition of Section 18.204, affordable housing. I see that staff is recommending a continuance of this.
Yes, it's on the agenda. It has been noticed for this meeting. If anyone is here to speak to it, that's okay. They can speak to it at this meeting, but we are asking that this item be continued in terms of its report and action.
Okay. This time I have no speaker cards. However, would anybody like to speak on this item? Okay.
Do we need to close the public hearing on this?
So formally, I make a recommendation. I opened it to close the
Public hearing open.
What's that?
The public hearing should remain open, and the action
It'll
is to
remain open until
continue.
next time. Correct. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so that hearing will open until our next meeting on February 8th. Can I hear a motion to continue?
Move to continue.
Do we need one, Mr. Rubens?
You should have a formal motion
Okay,
to
move to
a
continue
date
to
certain.
February 8th, this item.
So that was here. Second?
Second.
Did you second it?
I did.
Motion? Okay. Roll call.
Councilmember Mott?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Klein?
Yes.
Mayor Royce?
Yes. 9B, consideration for resolution adopting an addendum to the Highlands Park Lower Athletic Field conversion to synthetic surface project mitigated negative declaration and adopting a revised mitigated monitoring and reporting program. I believe we have a staff report first on this.
Mr. Mayor, we're on 8B, just for the record.
Actually, it's
No, it's
Nine.
9.
9B.
We
Yeah.
the new revised agenda.
Did not look at it, so I'm wrong.
Hey, if you get within one, Mr. Klein, you're doing great.
All right.
horseshoes and grenades.
Ms. Nelson, thank you.
Yes, Deborah Nelson, Planning Manager. On April 13th of '09, the council adopted a mitigative negative declaration and a mitigation monitoring and reporting program, and in those actions you determined that all potential environmental impacts of the Highlands Field or athletic field replacement project could be mitigated to a level of significance and that there were no substantial health and safety risks associated with exposure to or use of synthetic turf. The lower portion of this aerial is the project site. And additionally, at the time you approved this project, you talked about choosing a preferred product, and in your action you amended the mitigated negative declaration, providing choice for you as you went out to bid, and more recently you directed organic or natural infill product when you authorized the design contract. So in looking at the advantages of replacement of this existing field, the key advantages of organic infill are better playability, reduced heat, no off-gassing, and more natural appearance. As far as CEQA is considered, the city may proceed with these changes in this project when the impacts are less than significant. But we have gone a step further and had consultants prepare an addendum to that environmental document, which also meant some revisions, slight revisions to the mitigation monitoring and reporting program. So concerning the document, the addendum addresses impacts to aesthetics. Rubber crumb is removed from the analysis. Organic infill material is replaced. The result is a more natural coloring is achieved. You basically get many more colors of green to make it look more natural. And the conclusion is there's no unmitigable impact. In hazard and hazardous materials, the turf specification removed rubber crumb and replaced that with organic infill material. This removed the perceived health risk of rubber crumb. Also, as I mentioned before, heat and off-gassing are not existent, so there's no unmitigable impacts. Also, with regard to hazard and hazardous materials, there was a notification procedure both for users and at the site and signage and for users, and these were hygiene precautions related to rubber crumb. Field signage and field usage agreements will continue to require hygiene guidelines. So the result is no unmitigable impacts. Then with regard to utilities and services, there is slightly more water use with the organic infill in its maintenance than there is with rubber crumb, yet it's far lower than existing grass fields. So there is no significant impact. Technically, the mitigation monitoring and reporting plan is amended. Mitigation I-1 and mitigation VII-1A refer to the replacement with organic infill material, and mitigation measure VII-1D amends the guidelines for the use. So the recommendation of staff is that you adopt the resolution with the revised project and revised mitigation measures. And with that adoption, you find that there are fewer environmental impacts identified in this revised mitigation and monitoring program. The impacts would be reduced to less than significant levels, and there's no new or substantially more severe impacts identified with preparation of the addendum. That concludes my report.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Robert, you got some stuff to show off here?
Yes, before I do that, I did want to report on the results of the bid opening that was held last Thursday. And that's part of the timing of why this is coming forward to you now, because this is relatively new on the market, this product. We wanted to make sure this was technically and economically viable before recommending the substitution mitigation measure and committing ourselves to use this product. And it was very good news. We received 9 bids, and they were all very tightly grouped. And the low bid is about $300,000 less than our budget. So I can recommend to you that this is a technically and financially viable product. This is the when I showed you these samples in November, there were two manufacturers that we were considering, and all the low bidders chose these products by Lamonta Sport USA. So this is the product that would be used in the field. And as you may remember, there was a base bid product and then an alternate bid product. The alternate bid's denser and firmer material. And then but the subject of this neg deck is the infill material, which is a sample up here, and I'll pass this around and then we can put it on the table over there. They use a combination of cork and coconut for this infill. And as Deborah mentioned, part of the problem with the traditional synthetic turf fields is the crumb rubber that's mixed in this infill tends to gather heat. It tends to make the ball play unevenly because there's an unnatural bounce to the ball, and it smells. This has none of those disadvantages. It just seems to me, from a specifier's point of view, to be a superior product. And we would be the first municipality in the United States to build one of these fields if, in fact, we go forward and do that. So with that, I'll pass this around and glad to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Again, I have 3 speaker cards. I'd like to get public comment first. In this order, Danielle Herrera, Heidi Crone, and Pat Bell. And anybody else, just kind of get ready after that. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Danielle.
And again, if we could limit it to about 2 minutes in time, it would greatly be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Danielle Schechter Huerta, and I'm a member of Save San Carlos Parks. Our group wants to acknowledge that the suggested change from rubber crumb infill to natural infill is an improvement to the proposed project. Clearly, with the formal change in the mitigated negative declaration, the city is responding to the litigation brought by Save San Carlos Parks. The city is acknowledging that the community is concerned about the rubber crumb infill that is toxic and could have a negative impact on our children and the environment. As today's staff report states, the natural infill has the benefits of reduced heat and no off-gassing. However, our group still has concerns about the environmental impacts of the project. We are concerned about the increased risk of bacterial infection, increased traffic and parking issues, and the overuse of this one city facility. Unfortunately, the MND still fails to address these issues. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Heidi Crone?
Good evening, Mayor Royce and City Council members. I'd like to point out there are significant inconsistencies in the information contained in the staff report. The numbers given in the fiscal implications section show synthetic turf maintenance and replacement to be less expensive than replacement and maintenance of natural grass. However, both independent research and the staff's own estimates from an earlier study show this to be untrue. Synthetic turf is always more expensive to install and maintain than grass. The numbers shown for grass are more than double the staff's prior estimates. So I encourage you to look into that. Additionally, according to their announcement at the Athletic Site Advisory Committee, January 12th, the Park and Recreation Department plans on closing multiple parks this year, as well as the youth center for 10 months of the year. The city's priority should be to increase accessibility to all our parks, not shut them down in favor of one synthetic field that will be scheduled out to the highest bidder and closed to all others. Will the City Council please take a hard look at this over $2 million investment in a short-term solution lasting only 8 years that robs all other park and recreation needs? It is time to direct Measure G and the PAMP funds to be used to keep all our parks open and functional. If this requires a ballot measure, then let's put it on the ballot and let the people speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pat Bell?
Pat Bell, San Carlos. I would echo what the 2 previous speakers said and add that being the first municipality in the United States to use this stuff is not reassuring to me. I don't want to be the first to find out what the unintended consequences are of this stuff. And it's nice that it doesn't outgas. It's nice that it doesn't get as hot. But I don't think kids breathing coconut fibers is a good thing. I mean, any foreign stuff that gets in your lungs can cause pneumonia, and they just shouldn't be breathing this junk. Cork and coconut is better than rubber, but it's not the right thing to do. And as Heidi said, this city can't afford this. Come on, folks. You're in such a bind that you want to cut the police budget further and the fire budget further, and you want to spend $2 million on fake grass. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't like fake grass anyway, but even if I did.
Thank you, Pat. Okay, and Previn Matatu? Okay, please, come join us. From Youth Advisory Council. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Previn Naidu from the Youth Advisory Council. And I just wanted to comment on this issue about how, I mean, I remember a few months back, I think Mayor Bob, not Mayor Bob anymore, but
Bob's fine.
You can still call him mayor. He likes that.
Sure.
Councilman Grisilli was was at our meeting at the time, and I think were you there when we got the charts and everything? Well, whatever, it doesn't matter. But yeah, so we got these charts, and it said about how if we had the natural grass and the fake grass, and this was the old rubber grass, and that if we did that, the fake grass would be the more cost-effective measure because of constant renovation. So I just want to, unless the circumstances have changed, I just want to clear that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Anybody else like to speak on this item? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, through the city attorney, make a motion to close the public hearing then?
Yeah, this is a public hearing item, so.
So I'll make a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Okay, first and second, to close the public hearing. Ms. Bowling, roll call?
Councilmember Mott?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Klein?
Yes.
Mayor Royce?
Yes. Okay, Mr. Grocott, you look like you're ready to go. Please.
Well, I just have a question that somewhat relates to what Ms. Bell was talking about, and that's, I'll put it just in general terms. One of the things I'm failing to understand is with an environmental document like this that we did, and now the product's being changed, and by all appearances and by all concession, it seems, it's a better product. It's safer and so forth. But to put it in different terms, let's say you had a project and it dealt with gasoline, and you did an environmental report and it was all about how to mitigate, damage to the environment relative to gasoline. And then as a project proponent, you're going to build this thing and it has to do with gasoline. You decide, I'm not going to use gasoline anymore. I'm going to use a biofuel. And so you show up at City Hall and you say, I've changed my project. I'm not going to be storing gasoline. I'm going to be storing biofuel. And I tell you that biofuel is safer. What's the process I have to go through? You see what I'm saying? Because what we're doing is we're changing a specification. We're relying on somebody to tell us, well, this is a safer product. I believe it's a safer product, but I'm just wondering about the process that we're going through to get from point A to point B.
Well, Deborah Nelson, Planning Manager, Councilmember Grocott, and answer your question, we did have this evaluated, the environmental document evaluated relative to the other product. And the council, when you adopted the first environmental analysis on April 13th last year, you considered a range of projects, and the environmental document considered the case of Rubber Crumb as one that had greater impacts in the measures that I mentioned than another more environmentally appropriate product might be, should there be one that comes on the market. At the time, Rubber Crumb was the one considered most viable in terms of what was on the market. So CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, has a provision that allows you to do an addendum to your environmental document if there is no significant environmental impact identified from this modification to the project that you want to make. So that's what we've done, is an addendum. It does not identify any additional environmental impacts. It actually says they're less.
Can you, if I may just follow up, can you explain to us a little bit more detail? You said you had the product researched a little bit, or I'm not using the same terms that you did.
Yeah,
I guess the first step in the process was
call on the environmental consultant here, but yeah, the environmental analysis did look at this product versus the product that had the most scrutiny in your mitigated negative declaration, which was the Rubber Crumb
right,
product.
yeah.
And in that scrutiny, this product has less impact.
Okay. And then one more question regarding that. It relates to the infill material. It does say in here that we would have to use more water, and I remember that being in the original reports, the comparison to natural grass versus artificial turf and how much water use there was. I remember that being changed from when we first delved into this issue long ago and far away to being a different figure because of concerns people have brought up about the heat, and then it was said, well, yes, because of the heat issue, you will have to water this maybe more than we had indicated in the original report, so the water figures were upped. Now they're being upped again, but I have nothing here in this report to compare it to. And this is a two-part question. I'm sorry it'd be so long, but you know, I'm looking at our economic situation right now. Let's just say, for instance, we put this field in, we have this product, and it says in the specifications you need to water this a certain amount in order to keep some heaviness to the material so it'll stay in place. And we get in a budget situation where we say, well, we really can't water that field that much. Does that mean we have to close the field because we can't use it because the infill material might not stay in place?
I'd probably have to ask the city engineer or the
Through the
public
chair,
works
through the chair,
director.
through the chair, there's the numbers, Ms. Grocott, right there. So it's 23 times more, according to the sorry.
But the question of can you use it if you don't put water on it to make it heavy is probably a maintenance discussion that would happen should that come up. But for maintenance of this kind of field, it's certainly a lot less than natural grass, and it is slightly 2 inches of water demand per year. The other was nominal. We did not count, I don't recall, a number of inches per year to kind of water it to keep it cool. But in terms of maintenance for the product itself, it's way below the capacity that is allowed up there in your agreement with Cal Water, and also in terms of the difference of product, it's a lot less.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Was Mr. Weil going to speak to something? I don't know.
I just wanted to reaffirm what Deborah Nelson said. It's a maintenance issue. It's just you would have to replace the infill material more if you let it dry out because it would tend to blow away.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Councilmember.
I don't have any questions to staff. This is just an addendum, a change to the EIR that we vetted, I think, ad nauseum before, so I don't really have any questions on it.
Okay. Mr. Klein? Well, there was a lot of comments about whether it's fiscally prudent to do this right now. We are going to discuss that later on because that's not agendized now, but when we talk about bringing bids in and approving a bid, that will be a topic of discussion, so we're not skirting the bill right now, but this is what we're talking about now, and I'm fine with it. I have no questions. And just to clarify what Ms. Nelson said, if you stop watering a grass field, you can't play on it either. So, I mean, if we stop watering any fields in San Carlos, we're going to have to stop using them.
Vice Mayor Ahmad?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to thank Ms. Nelson and city staff. They will recall that at the time of the negative declaration, I had specifically called for alternative materials to be looked at. And in fact, I believe Ms. Nelson was sitting here as I handed her a couple of brochures from the University of All Things Good and Virtuous, which was working on the University of Florida, home of the Fighting
I was going to
Gators.
mention, it must be the University of Florida. Do they have a
All
football,
things good
they have a
and
football coach? I don't.
A beautiful one. But there were 2 points that came up. One, Mr. Grocott had asked, just as a round number, the organic infill would use, by my calculations, about 4.4% of the water that natural grass would use. And I realized there was significant discussion of bacterial issues. At the last meeting, I went through a fairly exhaustive discussion during the neg deck, and I would, once again, for folks who are concerned about bacterial issues, I would refer them to the Penn State soil study that does show an order of magnitude less bacteria grow on synthetic surfaces versus natural. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to make a motion unless you have.
Please, I have nothing. No
Mr. Mayor, I move
questions.
adoption of resolution number 2010-4. Resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos adopting an addendum to the Highlands Park Lower Athletic Field Conversion to Synthetic Surface Project Mitigated Negative Declaration, State Clearinghouse number 2009-022026, and adopting a revised mitigation monitoring and reporting program.
Second.
Okay, we have first and second. We have roll call?
Councilmember Ahmad?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Klein?
Yes.
Mayor Royce?
Yes. Okay. Mr. Mora is ready for unfinished business because we've talked about this. This consideration setting a hearing on April 12th of 2010, consider increased rates for residential and commercial solid waste collection service pursuant to Proposition 218 and authorize participation in the rethinkwaste.org door-to-door household hazardous waste collection program. With that, Mr. Moore, staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Royce. Brian Moore, Assistant City Manager. As the mayor noted, this is a continuation from your last meeting. We're talking about two things here. One is to set a rate hearing for solid waste rates for 2010 on April 12th pursuant to Prop 218. The other thing we're asking you tonight is to consider authorizing the city's participation in Rethink Waste.org's proposed door-to-door household hazardous waste collection program. Just to go over the highlights of this item from last time, there are basically three elements to what is being proposed tonight. The first is authorizing staff to conduct a rate hearing for the necessary 8.1% rate hike for solid waste collection services in the city of San Carlos. Second, proposed increase in the solid waste franchise fee from 8 to 10%, as we discussed last year, also in December at your budget strategy meeting and last meeting as well. This brings San Carlos closer to the prevailing practice of most of the cities in the rethinkwaste.org group, and also significantly in terms of addressing the city's general fund budget challenges. This would add $95,000 per year in new revenue to the general fund. The third item, which is an optional item, which again is open to council discussion and policy direction to staff, is a discussion of whether or not the council is interested in having a door-to-door household hazardous waste collection program. As we noted last time, 2/3 of the agencies in rethinkwaste.org have expressed interest in this program, and to date, 2 city councils, Belmont and Hillsborough, have already approved it. It is now pending in a number of other city councils. In the last staff report, we primarily focused on the cost implications of this program. It would cost over $45,000 in year one to add it for single-family residents. It would also cost an additional $7,000 if we added it for both single-family and multifamily, and staff recommended that if you proceeded, we would suggest you do it for both. It does show the rate impact of such a program, 1.76% on the residential rate and 0.2 or 0.22 I guess of a percent on the commercial and multifamily. We provided a lot of detail to you in terms of the actual operation of the program. I won't go into that, but I will be available for questions. I should also mention that we have both Kevin McCarthy and Cliff Feldman from RethinkWaste.org here tonight, and also we have a representative from Curbside Inc., because I know the council had a number of operational questions about how the program would work. I think in terms of highlights, as you see in the staff report, the way the program works is a resident would call the company and ask for what they call collection kit, which, as I understand it, is a series of heavy-duty bags for different types of material. The resident would bag up the material, as it were, and then would call the company for an appointment within a 2-week window. Typically, what the company does is advises the resident to put the material out on either the porch or the driveway the evening before the pickup, and then the pickup occurs. As it notes in the staff report, residents can arrange for as many of these pickups as they like during any particular year. There's a specific number of items that are called out in the report that talks about what is allowed to be picked up. And we've also provided you, as an attachment, a detailed discussion of how the program works. The only restriction, as it were, is each pickup is limited to 125 pounds per visit. So those are some of the highlights, but again, I'd be happy to field any questions. And again, we have both the Curbside Inc. and RethinkWaste.org folks here to delve into that. And again, on number 3, this is an optional program. It is solely at the discretion of the council whether you wish to proceed or not.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. So let's see here, which way do we go here? So questions, maybe?
Do we have any
Mr.
public?
Bott?
Do we have any public comment?
No, don't have any cards here. Anybody would like to speak on this item? You're welcome to, now or after. Okay.
All my questions were answered. My big issue was how did the pickup work, and that's answered. So I would like to go with option 2. So we'll see some revenue from increasing our fees, and the door-to-door household waste is going to be paid by the people, the citizens. So we're not going to see a general fund hit, and I think it's a good program to have. I think a lot of people either throw away household waste or they store it in their garage for a really long time, and I'd like to see people have the ability to put it on their front doorstep and have someone come pick it up.
Are you making that a motion?
Well, I think other people are going to want to talk.
Through the chair, could we have a couple of comments first, if it's possible?
Yeah, so that's all I have.
However you wanted to proceed.
Yeah, I'd like to hear questions. Actually, first, maybe. I'm sorry. I should have.
Oh, sorry.
Better.
Sure. I don't have any
No, that was
questions.
totally mine. I thought we could probably just go through it just as fast. But questions.
Well, I'm done.
Any questions, Mr. Ahmad?
No questions.
I had a couple. I tried, Brian. I really did. I cocked you before, and I'm sorry. I got more now. I don't know.
Okay, fair enough.
5% is the threshold, so to speak.
That's Councilmember Grisilli, that's the estimate of participation.
Right. Now, is that counted as, let's say I call 20 times a year, is that 20? Or is it by household, or how does it work?
I think
What's
I'm
the
going
5%?
to turn to my friend from SBWMA and Curbside to...
Cliff's going to dazzle me, okay. You see where I'm going here?
Yes, Cliff Feldman, Recycling Program Manager, SBWMA. The way the calculation will be, it will be based on a call base. So if you call and you get your collection 2 weeks, you call again 2 weeks, that would be 2.
Okay.
So we'll go
So
all
it could,
inclusive.
so 10% of our, or a small percentage of our homeowners could easily cover that. I mean, in mathematical terms, in theory, it could go up.
In theory,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. And one more question. Is the 45 cents for our city the same as the other cities?
Yes.
So it's going to be uniform for every city, whether they have a population of 10,000 people or our 29,000 people.
Correct. The rates, 45 cents per single family and 20 cents per multifamily, apply to all the agencies through our program.
Okay. Thank you.
Just to clarify, I guess, but based on the size of can, my understanding is like a 32-gallon can's 36 cents?
No, we're talking.
Oh, no,
about
this is
the
the other thing, yeah.
Sorry,
This is
we're
family.
talking
I'm
about
sorry.
the household waste.
Household waste, okay, got it.
I only am in love with that one. I'm not in love with the others.
Got it, thank you, sorry.
Okay, it's all right.
I mean,
That's
good
all I
feedback.
had. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Mr. Grocott?
No, I don't have any questions.
All right, if you have any questions.
Ready to move on.
Okay. So let's continue. Mr. Ahmad, thoughts then, discussion? Or Mr. Klein, were you through there? Any other
I'm
thoughts?
done.
Conclusion?
Nothing left for you.
I'll make the motion.
All right, this will be interesting. Not good at these. So I move to set a hearing on April 12, 2010 to consider increased rates for residential and commercial solid waste collection service pursuant to Prop 218 and authorize participation in rethinkwaste.org door-to-door household waste collection program.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to vote against this. I believe I'm for alternative one, but I just can't vote for the household waste one. I believe that it just seems like we're going to commit ourselves. Every household is going to pay. Granted, it's not $1 million, but we're going to commit ourselves to every household for $16, and I just can't see the usage on this that it's even going to get to 5%. But perhaps I'm from the last century, and perhaps that's the problem. But anyway, I just wanted to make that statement.
Okay. Any other comments, questions before we vote on the motion and second?
My only comment is I think, we should be looking to minimize the rate increases instead of finding ways to increase them. I just don't see this demanding need to change the service and increase this or to add this service. There are ways, if you have paint in your garage, to properly dispose of it. It just takes a little research on anyone's part, which isn't too hard these days to do. Even just calling up the waste company and asking them, how am I supposed to dispose of these materials? I agree with Mr. Grisilli on this item, and so I'll vote against it. Understanding and realizing, this is a Prop 218 hearing we're voting on, and all we're saying is, should we put this to the voters to vote on and decide? But we all know the participation in Prop 218 hearings virtually doesn't exist. It's a nice idea to give it to the people and let them decide on things like this, but people are busy with their lives and other things. They don't pay attention to nickel and dime increases in their rates and services. And quite frankly, I would just add the comment, these green buckets that we did for food waste. What I hear from people is they use them for other things. I know what I use it for in my house, and it doesn't get used for food waste, so.
I'm afraid to ask what it's used for.
I store my dog's food in it. It's very simple.
So with the ability to recycle food scraps, you don't?
Well, can we have? There's a
Wait,
question on the.
so-
There's a question. There's a
so,
question
Matt,
on the question on the floor.
So, Matt, anything else then? Yeah. So I'll just comment myself. I thought quite a bit from 2 weeks ago when we discussed this matter. I think Councilmember Grisilli brought up a good point on do we really need to raise costs? Over the last week, I had a compact fluorescent bulb go out, and I pulled it out, and I walked in the garage with it. Typically, I think of most citizens, okay, what do I do with this thing? There's a garbage can there, and I walked it over in a corner. Of course, I had a 4-foot fluorescent tube already standing in the corner, so I put it over there, and I looked around, and I got a lot, paint and cleaners, and I just get to, from all the recycling we do that's great for planet Earth, I think food scraps is really great, but I really do get concerned when people have, and I have in my house, pharmaceuticals. I change my own oil in my car still. There's just some really nasty stuff that can really damage planet Earth. And I think a lot of people are so busy and they're working. They try to do all the right things most of the time, but I think a lot of it could end up in our landfill. So I think for a little cost, I think we have the biggest payback as far as protecting our landfill by making it really easy and convenient for our citizens to get rid of their scary stuff. So, thank you.
Okay.
With
call
that,
question.
call the vote.
Councilmember Ahmad?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
No.
Councilmember Grocott?
No.
Councilmember Klein?
Yes.
Mayor Royce?
Yes. Okay, we are down to new business. We have 3 items. Just to give you a quick summary, we have final offer for the police officers. Then we will be going on talking about Holly Street and ending on a newsletter for the city of San Carlos. So with that, we go back here to 11A. Mr. Muldy, consideration for adopting resolution imposing City of San Carlos last, best, and final offer to the San Carlos Police Officers Association pursuant to the Government Code Section 3505.4. Please.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Jeff Malpe, Administrative Services Director. The item before you tonight is dealing with the implementation, a resolution implementing changes in salary and benefit conditions for the Police Officers Association. The city and the POA are signatories on a memorandum of understanding which expired July 31st, 2008, setting certain terms and conditions of employment for employees of the Police Officers Association bargaining unit. Beginning in April of 2008, the city and the POA negotiating teams began to meet. We've met a number of times over the last 22, 23-month period of time in an effort to negotiate a successor memorandum of understanding. In addition to meeting, the two teams meeting, we've also incorporated the use of state mediation as outlined in the city's employer-employee relations resolution. However, the city and the POA have remained significantly apart on such terms. The city submitted the city's last best and final offer dated November 4th, 2009 to the POA. The POA did not accept this offer by the date of November 19th, 2009. The city and the POA have arrived at impasse. In such circumstances, Government Code Section 3505.4 authorizes the city to implement its last best and final offer. The city's last best and final offer includes a 3.5% base salary increase retroactive to August 1st, 2008, the addition of a new special assignment pay for a maximum of 3 police officers at $180 a month, and an increase in the number of officers to which the chief could assign bilingual pay from 2 to 10. The increases in the cost of the Police Officer Association package before you tonight in totality is approximately $140,000. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. With me tonight also is Cynthia O'Neill from Liebert Cassidy Whitmore, who may be able to answer questions you may have as well. Thank you.
Questions? Oh, wait, we do have. Yeah, let me. We do have one speaker card. Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmad. Suzanne Shepard, welcome to speak on this matter. And anybody else would like to speak on this matter, just kind of get up here in the front row. Yes, Suzanne, welcome.
Good evening, City Council members and fellow POA members. My name is Suzanne Shepard. I'm a detective with San Carlos Police Department. I'm the vice president of the POA, and I'm also part of the negotiations team. I wanted to say a few words tonight about the resolution that you're going to be asked to vote on. We have been in negotiations for almost 2 years. In that time, not a lot of progress has been made. In our opinion, negotiations have been difficult because for the first time in decades, we have put our foot down and asked for what is fair and what we are worth. We have not settled for what the city arbitrarily wanted to hand out to all the labor unions, regardless of how it compared to their counterparts in the community. Our police officers and sergeants are currently the lowest paid in San Mateo County. Is the recession only affecting San Carlos? Despite not being able to reach an agreement during this time frame, it was the city that has declared an impasse and issued what legal opinion has characterized as an illegal last best and final offer. For that reason, we have refused to meet for an impasse agreement meeting, but in the same breath made it clear that we welcomed another meeting in our continuing efforts to reach an agreement. One email was exchanged with availability of dates, and then the city staff delivered a letter to us on Thursday that said we are refusing to meet with them and that the City Council will be voting on that resolution before you. We would hope that the City Council would vote against the resolution to impose an agreement on the POA. To do so would start a very costly legal battle that would benefit neither group, but that we have discussed and are prepared to embark on. We have the support of both regional and state affiliations, as a legal maneuver of this nature could affect associations statewide. I assure you we are not alone in our stand. That being said, we hope that the City Council votes against the resolution and sends the city back to the bargaining table where we still belong. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions of staff on the report? Okay.
I'll start.
Any discussion,
Yeah.
please?
Okay. And I apologize. It's going to take a while because this is a pretty sensitive subject. First off, I want to say, I have the utmost respect for our police department. They're hard workers, they believe in what they do, and they're of value to our city. And they are one of the lowest paid on the peninsula, which is unacceptable. They have the lowest, they have some of the lowest staffing levels, again, unacceptable. We're better than that as a town. They do a hard job, and with a state that takes money away from us, doesn't give any consideration of what we have to take back from our staff in order to fill these holes. We've lost a lot of good programs. We lost the PAL program. We lost the DARE program, which is where I met our chief in the 7th grade. He was my DARE officer, and we just don't have the money for that stuff anymore. And that's a shame. We had a campaign to try to get a new tax, which would help with this. We were talking about services, but services are provided by people. And we tried to get a tax to help fund our police department, our fire department, and our other departments. And unfortunately, we lost. A big part of that tax is salaries. And police salaries did come up during that discussion. You can point to a $160,000 police officer and get everyone up in arms in it, but you don't explain that it's overtime and how much overtime that takes is a toll on someone's life. I'm sure they'd much rather make less money and spend time with their families. But that never gets talked about. Then you leave us high and dry and try to run for supervisor and have us hold the bag. But this is where we are now. We have no money. We're becoming Vallejo. We are bleeding from the inside out. We're talking about closing parks. We're talking about closing a youth center. Our manager is going to have to talk to the sheriff about possibly having him come in and run our police department, run our town through the sheriff's office. We should never have gotten here, but we're here now. So my question is to the POA, they want us to fully staff them, but then they also want to raise. We can't do both. I'm sorry, we can't. I want to keep the staff at 100% of what it is now, but we're talking about laying people off. If we give raise and spend any more money, that's got to come at the expense of something. And we are talking about closing down a lot of the amenities in this town. And how do we justify that to our public and say, we closed parks, we fired police officers, but we gave the remaining ones a raise? I just can't get behind this, and I'm sorry. And I view the POA as a very smart organization. They're friends, some of them. And I think they do care about this town, and this breaks my heart to have to do this. I'm voting no against this, but not for the reasons you want me to. For the reasons that I just think across the board for our employees, we can't give any raises. We are going to have unions come to us to give us concessions. We are going to be firing a lot of people. To give anyone more money right now, I just don't think we can justify it. And this was probably, well, as of now, I've only been on the council for 40 days. This is the hardest decision. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, a lot of tossing and turning. I'm absolutely exhausted right now because this has been on my mind since Wednesday. And I truly have empathy for you. You do a hard job and you deserve better, but we just don't have any more money. I mean, we're broke. I wish if we had more money, I would get behind this, or I'd get behind more because you deserve better. But there's nothing we can do. And I wish you had taken this after we had lost. I wish you had taken this in November after Measure U lost. But they didn't. It's not enough for the POA, and I understand that. But right now, we can't give out any more money. I'm sorry. I truly am. So I'll be voting no.
Mr. Nod, you ready? You want to think about that? You could skip or come back to
Well,
Okay.
my comments are actually fairly brief. What Mr. Klein has said is correct with the police officers and to virtually every other person who works here in City Hall. We wish we could do better. To that extent, the police officers have organized and have formed a union, and unions have worked hard to ensure that they have rights. Those rights need to be respected, and as at this moment sitting on the dais, I represent, quote unquote, management. As the officers have taken oaths, so have I. My oath has to be to that of the city and representing the management of the city. Fair labor law prevents management from a lot of open discussion that I wish we could have. We work through our negotiators, and that is the way that the law has demanded it. We, 2 years ago, gave a 3.5%, roughly, raise across the board to the other unions. This is an attempt to bring everybody up to what is the level that we at least gave everyone else. There is one thing that the POA and folks on this dais have in common. Nobody is satisfied. I don't think you're going to find one person on this dais is particularly happy at this function, and I know that the members of the POA are not either. And sort of after discussion with Labor Council and recognizing my role, I will curtail my comments at that point, but I will be voting for this resolution.
Gentlemen, if you'd like to go, any order.
I don't see that there's I don't have much to say from the dais on this. We did talk about it in closed session. The only comment that I would have is if as it was said by the vice president of the POA that, they're intending to take us to court, it sounds like, if we do this. I think that's unfortunate. It's just more money that gets spent on things we don't need to be spending money on. And we would be entering into new contract negotiations. This thing is so far out. We're just about to go into the new contract negotiations. I'm not sure what the point of some kind of lawsuit would be when we're about to go into labor negotiations on a new contract. And that's what we're scheduled for. I would like to, a lot gets said about police officers, firefighters, city workers, and in regards to what they get paid. I think sometimes people look at me and say, oh, Mr. Grocott doesn't think that these people are worth what they get paid, or that I somehow disrespect people who are in uniform, or people who work in City Hall, because I'm the guy that's always talking about, look, we have to look at affordability, we have to look at our revenues, and we have to match our expenses to our revenues. And so I get criticized for that. It's not that at all. I'm out there myself running a business, working hard at my business, at taking care of my family, etc. And I know a lot of other people who are too, who own businesses, who've cut back. I know businesses that have laid workers off, sold their equipment to companies in China because they can't compete over here anymore. And it's hard times for everybody. So my point is, it's not a matter of, do these guys work hard? Do they put their lives in harm's way at times and do things that are that we call heroic? They do. If it was a perfect world, we'd pull money off of trees and pay them, whatever. That's not the question. It's not the question of worth. It's more, in my mind, a question of affordability. And even to Mr. Klein's point of, well, we put a measure on, a tax measure, people voted it down. They voted it down because partly because of the economic times that we're in, that people in their households, you have people on fixed income, you have people losing their jobs. Sorry, they don't want to pay more in taxes. And I'll just close with this. I am not leaving this council high and dry just because I'm running for county supervisor. That has nothing to do with it, and I do not appreciate the comment.
You don't have to appreciate it, but
Excuse me, gentlemen.
please.
Mr. Pacelli.
Again, as was mentioned here, this is a Hobson's choice. There's no good answer here. Timing in life, as we all know, is everything. And this is, as Dickens said in this, it's the best of times, it's the worst of times. Well, it's the second part of it. It's the worst of times. We have the responsibility up here to try to figure out how to make a decision when none can be reasonably made, but we have to make it. That's why we were elected. We had a tax measure. It didn't pass. The public spoke on a certain way. We have to work within our budget that we have. I think, at least from this council person's perspective, I felt that people should be compensated, granted perhaps not to the level of what they may think it should be, but I did not believe, and I will vote for the initiative. And again, I think Mr. Klein is voting no because I think he feels it should be more, and I'm not disagreeing with that. But I'm going to be voting for it because I think that we need to at least compensate our employees as best we can. And that's really the last part of it. As-
Councilmember Grisilli, not to interrupt you, but I just want to make sure people know what I said.
Can you let him finish?
I'm sorry. Yeah, normally, we let,
Let him
please don't
finish,
interrupt.
please.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you. It's a difficult issue, but like I said earlier, if I feel like some compensation is due, and that's why I'm going to be voting for it. And whatever has to happen in the future, everyone has to make those decisions for themselves. But I would hope that we would continue to talk and work together, because that's the only way this is going to get accomplished. Thank you.
Can I just make one correction then, Mr.
Can I
Mayor?
go through and then we'll come back to questions or
Well, it's
comments?
not a question, but-
Thank you. Yeah, just quickly, we've been working and negotiating and probably talking at least once a month on this issue for 18 months. The period we're talking about is actually from August of 08, or what is it? Yeah, August of 08 to July of 09. We're only talking about 1 year, but it's that year that already ended about 6 or 7 months ago, and we're offering what we think is fair, a 3.5% plus some other benefits here. I'm one, I'd like to kind of get that done and move on and start, looking again at from July 09 up to this next year. This is the current year. This year is going to get by. So it's kind of a situation where, well, boy, it's been a long time, and I'd like to get 1 year settled here, and that's what our best and final offer is. And we will continue to negotiate not only along with police. There's other contracts that start up again in this summer, and will take us through the end of the year. It's something that we always do, and we try to do a good job. We try to be fair. So with that, those are my thoughts. So, Mr. Klein, you had a question?
Yeah, just to correct what Councilmember Grisilli said, because I want to be able to be accountable and held responsible for this. I didn't vote no to give them more. I voted no to give them less.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So
I apologize.
I didn't want to be able to
I
hide behind that.
I misconstrued
So,
your comment,
yeah,
Mr.
I just
Klein.
want to
I'm
make sure
sorry.
people know what I'm saying.
Sorry.
No problem.
So with that, I hear a motion. Can I ask for a motion? See what happens here?
I'll make a motion that the City Council consider the adoption of resolution number... I'm sorry? 2010-5, resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos imposing the city's last, best, and final offer to the San Carlos Police Officers Association pursuant to Government Code Section 3505.4.
Second.
Okay. Roll call?
Councilmember Ahmad?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Klein?
No.
Mayor Royce?
Yes. Okay. We're now on to 11B. Consider top tier of alternatives for improving access to and from US 101 via Holly Street, and authorize consulting services by Mark Thomas and Company for a project study report. Mr. Weil.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Robert Weil, Public Works Director and City Engineer. And I have a brief presentation. Part of the presentation will be Mark Thomas and Company, who will talk about the details of the project. A year and a quarter ago, in this room, there were a lot of people in red shirts that were here to talk about Holly Street. And it was a general plan land use scheme that was intended to try to ease traffic on Holly Street through a change in land use. And the council turned down that scheme and said, let's look at some Holly Street alternatives instead. And so came back to you in March of 2009 and recommended that we put out a request for proposals for alternatives analysis, and recommended to the council, and the council concurred that the alternatives be constrained, that new structures over the highway, which would be costly, and any relocation of homes or businesses would be excluded from the alternatives. And we put it on as a fast-tracked item. It ended up being the strategic plan for the last 2 6-month periods. The RFP went out. The Transportation and Circulation Commission was directly involved in reviewing the RFPs, and Mark Thomas and Company was selected competitively based on their qualifications, but their fees were in line with all the other consultants that we evaluated. So they were selected for the alternatives analysis, but the request for proposals was also contemplated, and fees were evaluated for that as well. So we embarked on a community input process, and I'll just flip through these pretty quickly. We did have a lot of people here in this room on July 21st, 2009. Got some press out there about some of the ideas to realign traffic. We tried to look at every possible idea. And so people got excited about the ideas and came out in opposition to some of them and gave us some ideas as well. And all of those were evaluated. We did take a walking tour. That was interesting to see what it's like on the ground. Over the 2 periods, the Transportation and Circulation Commission did a pretty detailed job of looking at how are we going to evaluate all these alternatives. And they developed screening criteria, which are in the big appendix that you have in the staff report here. We added this meeting through the process because there was so much information to absorb. You allowed us to extend the strategic plan objective by a few months. And we added this information meeting, which was very valuable. We held it over in the community meeting, community library. And we had, about 40 people came, sat through from 6:30 to 9:30 at night, reviewing alternatives A through I in great detail. And I told them they were honorary engineers when the time we were done. And we got a lot of good input, and we moved forward with bringing back to the Transportation Circulation a review of the alternatives. And in December, brought to them a recommendation as to the top tier of alternatives. And here we are today to select that top tier of alternatives to go forward. And what the next steps for this will be a project study report. As you see from the fees, it's $467,000 to do a project study report. That's a lot of money. So in entering that process, we wanted to know just what it is we want on the other end of that process. What are the alternatives that we want to come out of that with? And it would be even more money if we had to go through this process as part of the project study report. So by front loading that, we're actually saving costs. What have we learned? Widening Holly Street is not necessary to handle future traffic. That was the project that we started with would have widened Holly Street near Industrial Road to make the intersection of Industrial Road and Holly Street function at a level of service that meets the general plan standards. But we found a better way to do that, a more effective, a cost-effective way to do that. And Brad Levine from Mark Thomas and Company will show you those plans and perhaps discuss that in a little detail. We looked at one-way traffic schemes, and unfortunately, we didn't come up with anything that really worked well. One-way traffic schemes always are a little bit difficult to implement and confusing to the motorist. You come in one way, how do you go back out the other way? And we didn't come up with anything that really worked well. And we heard from the neighborhood about unacceptable impacts of additional cars on their streets or cars that would cut through their streets because of this confusing traffic pattern. We took a good hard look at using a modern roundabout at Holly Street and Industrial Road. I'm a fan of roundabouts because they have a beneficial effect on traffic safety, reduced accidents, and in many applications they are better for pedestrians and bicyclists. But what we found, and largely through Commissioner Pinero's research, that this would not improve traffic safety, nor would it improve pedestrian and bicycle safety because of the amount of traffic we have to force through this intersection. Because of the amount of traffic, it needs to be a 2-lane roundabout, and then also the pedestrian and bicycle crossings would be difficult because of crossing 2 lanes and the number of volume of traffic. In terms of the interchange, which is really the heart of the project, we were looking for ways to make pedestrian and bicycle travel across 101 safe and convenient. One solution that we really took off the table was to build a bike and pedestrian bridge, as Belmont is doing. Belmont's bike bridge is going to cost about $9 million. And we only have...
How much, I'm sorry, Mr. Well?
About $9 million.
$9 million?
They're getting most of that from the federal economic stimulus grant, which was, so they were in the right place at the right time on that. I don't think we'd be so fortunate. So we looked at ways to make the interchange work better, and we found some good ways to do that, which Brad will talk about. But this concept of complete streets is that a street should function both equally well for motorists, pedestrians, bicycles, people with disabilities, all the needs of a street. And I think the designs that we came up with for Alternative D will do just that. We also looked at, while we're looking at Holly Street, and the main issue was how to get people on and off 101, we also wanted to make sure Holly Street, or at least the corridor for Holly Street, was complete, and that bicyclists could traverse the city in the east-west direction. Currently, you have good facilities in the north-south direction on Old County Road and Industrial Road. Old County Road, we've just gotten some grants to make them better. But we don't really have a good facility in east-west direction. And Holly Street itself is very congested with traffic, and the lanes are fairly narrow. And so we looked for other alternatives. And this idea of a bicycle boulevard on East San Carlos came up, and I think that would work well and fill an important gap. With that, I'll turn it over to Brad Levine to talk about the alternatives in some detail.
Good evening, City Council members. I'd like to walk through the 2 main alternatives, and there's a couple extra slides showing some of the detail. This first is based on the original baseline alternative that was identified in the Palo Alto Medical Foundation EIR. So this is a minimum, I believe, requirement that the project would have to complete. Real quick first, the problems we have right now is inefficient traffic through this intersection at Holly and Industrial Road. The third lane of westbound Holly right now is forced onto the southbound 101 on-ramp. There's only a 1-lane loop on-ramp to northbound 101, which is the primary northbound access for the city. And as typical with a cloverleaf, there's weaving movements in all 4 sides of the interchange. Traffic getting on and traffic going to the freeway, and et cetera, all the way around, which, especially as traffic increases, becomes less and less safe. So the key improvements with this base project would be to eliminate the northbound loop off-ramp from the freeway. This eliminates the weave motion from the loop on and the loop off here, and it eliminates the weave from traffic getting onto westbound Holly and getting off of Holly on to go south on 101. That traffic is rerouted on the diagonal off-ramp, which is realigned, as you see here, and widened, and comes up to a new signalized intersection at Holly, which now serves both east and westbound Holly. That also eliminates this higher speed diagonal on-ramp or diagonal to eastbound Holly, which makes this a safer transition for bicyclists passing through. The project would widen the loop on-ramp to 2 lanes to handle a future anticipated increase in vehicle capacity going northbound 101. And one of the biggest benefits is we would extend the 3rd lane from Holly all the way through to the 2nd lane of the loop on-ramp. So that provides 2 through lanes of traffic all the way to 101, which greatly helps the throughput. The project would widen Industrial Road here, adding a second through lane. There's currently 2 right turn lanes. Again, with the 2 lanes all the way through here, those 2 right lanes would be better balanced. And with an additional through lane, this would allow the signal to operate more efficiently. And then the last thing we would do is convert what's currently right now a left and through lane on Hawley to a left only, and then the 2 right lanes, which are through and then through right, can now take 2 lanes of traffic all the way through. And by doing that, that allows us to eliminate the widening that was originally proposed in this segment of Hawley Street. One of the additional things that would happen here with this change in the infrastructure is the signal timing would get changed to an 8-phase timing, which you can do with a left turn only lane here. And then the last element is we were continually trying to look at how to improve the bike and ped access through and over 101 and through the interchange area. So in the eastbound direction, we've actually made it more difficult by adding the second loop on-ramp lane here. So to mitigate for that, we're proposing potentially an underpass that would loop around underneath the ramps and take cyclists underneath, and it would be 2-way for pedestrians. So they would not interact with this traffic at all at these intersections. This next slide highlights that. I just want to point out real quickly, the problem with a 2-lane entrance to a ramp is a bicyclist coming along this side here on the shoulder that wants to go through has to weave across 2 lanes of traffic and then get over here, and that's a lot more dangerous than one. One's bad enough, 2 is really dangerous. And then also pedestrians would have to cross a pretty long stretch there. Cars tend to approach this, come up to this loop at pretty high speed because it's a free right. So that's a long distance for pedestrians to also negotiate. What we would do is take the bikes off here, bring them around next to the loop, come underneath, and then there'd be 2 bridge structures, or there's various ways to do this, to bring the bike path underneath. This would be one way for bikes. The westbound bikes would be on the other side. But for pedestrians, the pedestrian route is only on the south side of Hawley. The sidewalk over the freeway is only on the south side. So this would be two-way for pedestrians. The second major alternative that we're proposing to carry forward would be to completely upgrade the 101 Hawley interchange to a full partial cloverleaf. And it would be essentially the same as the first alternative with these additional benefits. We would remove the southbound loop off-ramp from 101, which again eliminates the last 2 weaving movements. That traffic would be rerouted on the diagonal. This signal would be moved up and modified so that it served east and westbound Hawley Street. We would move the southbound on-ramp to 101 up to the intersection, and that would create a safer ramp crossing for bicyclists and pedestrians, because that would force cars to slow down, stop, and then make a right as opposed to a free right, which is much safer, a much safer crossing. We would square off the loop on-ramp to get the same benefit here. We would square off the diagonal on-ramp here, again, to get that same benefit of slowing cars a bit. And then by doing these, we can add a bike pocket between the through lane and the right turn lane to the ramp. So there'd be a bike pocket here, a striped 4-foot or 5-foot wide pocket. And then bikes, when they cross that lane, have a place to go to. They come through the signal, there'd be another bike pocket here, takes them past this traffic, and then we would add a bike pocket up here approaching the industrial road. So by this final alternative would provide a pretty good route for bikes each direction, east and west over the freeway. And that also greatly improves the traffic safety by eliminating all the weaving movements. The last element that is part of this, and this is an alternative that could be actually done separately from the PSR process because it's not in Caltrans right-of-way, and it could be done with either alternative. But to complete the east-west bike connection from the east side of 101 all the way to, ultimately to El Camino, we looked at this bike boulevard that Robert mentioned. I just want to briefly explain some of the elements of it. This is East San Carlos Avenue. Holly is right up here. What we would do is add a signalized intersection at Industrial Road, which allows bikes and peds to have a safe crossing of Industrial on this alignment. This small street, McHugh Avenue, that currently is can go either way, would become right only so that cars aren't creating a danger here with a signalized intersection trying to turn out that direction. We would complete the missing sidewalk segment from, I think this is Bayport, up to Industrial, so there'd be a sidewalk the entire length of East San Carlos Avenue. That would alter the parking situation here where these businesses are. It would convert from, right now, they can they can just kind of pull in diagonally. That would convert to parallel parking. And then we would move the signal that currently is right here for pedestrian crossing of Old County Road down to East San Carlos. And then this intersection with Bayport would be improved both for pedestrians crossing this direction and also as kind of a place that slows traffic down that's cutting through on East San Carlos Avenue. One option here is to potentially put in kind of a raised paved island called a speed bump or speed table, and then add crosswalks. That would be explored more in more detailed design. And then there would be signs and stenciling added to the pavement, identifying this as a bike boulevard, share the road with bikes. Typically, there's not a centerline stripe on a bike boulevard. And finally, this wouldn't have any impact on the utility corridor on the north side of East San Carlos Avenue. There's currently a utility pole line and I think some underground utilities there, and those could all remain in place with this configuration. So that's kind of a description of the alternatives that are being proposed. Robert?
So we're recommending for the top tier of alternatives that we do that first slide you saw, the enhanced baseline project. So it's the PAMF mitigation, the mitigations that were identified through the PAMF EIR, as modified by what we've learned through this process. Not having to widen on Holly Street, but including the bicycle undercrossing that Brad talked about. And that's what our traffic impact mitigation fee will fund, that $5 million. We'll see if we can get some grants to buy that down a little bit. But also, we want, while we're going through this expensive process, let's clear the project that we really think is the best, and so we can and see if we can get some grant money to do it. That would be that enhanced alternative D that Brad talked about, the full conversion to a partial clover leaf. And as Belmont found, when they have a project that's ready, you can tend to attract money, and I think we've gotten a chance at least to do that. Redwood City would benefit from this project as well as San Carlos since it serves both cities. So we should partner with them to see if we can get their support for these grants. And I'll be doing that informally, and the council may want to do that when the appropriate time when it comes to a political decision. We are recommending that you approve the Mark Thomas agreement, basically an amendment to their agreement. But they've done a good job on this first phase. I'm pleased with their work, and I find their proposal to be reasonable for this next phase of work. One of the ideas that Mark Thomas came up with is that we might be able to talk Caltrans into condensing 2 phases of study into one. They normally make it go through a project study report and then a project report. And maybe we could get them to do a project study report / project report. We won't know until we knock on the door and start talking to them. But they've done a number of these, and they feel this is a good candidate for that. So I appreciate that kind of thinking to save us money. I mentioned this, seeking the grant funds to supplement the traffic impact mitigation fees. The bicycle boulevard on East San Carlos, that goes into another category that would not be in the project study report because it's not on Caltrans right away. We don't have to go through this expensive process to get them to approve it. But we would want to put it in our bicycle transportation plan. The Transportation and Circulation Commission is updating that plan right now. And that's, it's a good time to be doing that because there's a lot more money coming out for bicycles and bicycle improvements. And so we want to put that in that plan and then seek grant funds for that. That would cost probably about $600,000, rough order of magnitude from what we see. We did identify a number of short-term improvements in the staff report, some of which are controversial. I got ahead of the council a little bit talking about possibility of eliminating trucks on Holly Street. That's really just an idea at this point. Will definitely need to be vetted through all the people that have an interest in transportation, the industrial users, the commercial users, and that would definitely come back to the council at a later date after it goes to the Transportation and Circulation Commission. So I apologize for, maybe that's one of the reasons I'm so popular, because I talk about ideas as if they're already decided, but they're obviously they're not, and we do need to bring those back. So I have some other slides to show you, but I'll stop there, and it may help with any questions we have.
Great. Robert, well, thank you and our consultant for all your work on this, your patience. I think you've gone at about the right pace, and also to Greater East Side, I know had tremendous input and time in providing input to this. So what I'd like to do is go through just questions first of staff or the consultant, and then public comment. Looks like we have a couple of those, and then we'll discuss the item. So with that, may I start with Councilmember Grocott, questions first?
Excuse me, I have some questions, but I'm not sure, the focus here seems to, approve the two alternatives. Can we comment or ask questions about the two alternatives or ideas that also might be thought of regarding them?
This is the time to ask input or the consultant on any other alternatives, surely.
Okay. So the first question I had regards Holly Street itself. You had mentioned about, the reaction you got regarding trucks. I had brought up one time about looking at Holly Street, converting it to 2 lanes all the time instead of 2 lanes some of the time. Because I think that adds to some of the, my experience with that is that it adds to the traffic backup that you get on occasion, because people think they have to narrow down to 1 lane and they really don't at that time, and there's confusion. And I could also see confusion with regard to that, where if you're coming eastbound and it's a particular time of day and it's 1 lane, and then you approach the intersection, you've got all these lanes to choose from. You don't know which one takes you to the freeway, that kind of thing. I've seen that actually. San Mateo has that 2 lanes as you come over. What is it, Hillsdale? I'm trying to think. Hillsdale, you come across, and unless you drive it a lot, you don't know that you're the 1 lane. You can get on the freeway. But people are always trying to go over to the most right, thinking, I got to be in the most right to get on the freeway, and actually you don't. You can stay in the lane you are in. And so I'd hate to see that kind of confusion. So anyways, I guess to just wrap up that comment, looking at 2 lanes going both ways all the time. I know it eliminates parking in front of people's houses, but it might help improve the whole traffic situation.
I could zoom in a little bit more on this.
Yeah.
We did talk about that quite a bit. And one of the things we heard from the neighborhood is how confusing the existing situation is, with a little sign that says what to do, and people just might not see that.
Right.
You talked about how, when we first started off on this, how you find yourself kind of covering 2 lanes, and somebody tells you to go to, there's 2 lanes here.
Right. Are they flipping you off or telling you 2 lanes?
And I don't think the neighborhood works without parking, on-street parking at all. I guess that's somewhat of in the realm of opinion versus an engineering judgment, but I think that if you have you have guests over, teenagers, they have friends over, and there's really no place you could go like around the corner here. You know, you can't really go park in a gas station lot or on Industrial Road. There's no place else to go. So I think this neighborhood does need on-street parking, at least in the evening hours and on weekends. What we did come up with, though, were some solutions to make the existing situation less confusing. And that is part of the project. I didn't go into detail on it at all, but what we do think that there should be a lane line that shows there's 2 lanes. Then there needs to be something else to say that there's parking sometimes. One idea would be to mark parking stalls on the pavement, so the motorist would get 2 messages. Gee, there's 2 lanes, but there's also, I can expect parking here sometimes. That's one approach we talked about, and that's what's shown on our diagrams here, if you had a good magnifying glass. Another idea that we were just talking about is using some intelligent transportation systems where you might have a changeable sign as you approach Holly Street, so that at certain times of the day, when there's parking there, the sign shows an arrow, like merge. Other times of the day, when there's no parking there, it would show 2 vertical arrows saying 2 lanes. And we could have one in either direction and send that message. Definitely needs improvement. I think you do need to keep parking there to make the neighborhood work, though.
Next question was for the boulevard that you talk about, the bicycle boulevard. I take it you're actually creating bike lanes, is that right, or are you using sharrows?
No, it would be neither one. Closer to sharrows, though.
Closer to sharrows?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a concept that came out of Palo Alto and has been heavily used in
Or they have
Berkeley
the
as well.
bollards and, yeah.
Right. Where it's also called there's another word for it. I just left my mind. But it's the bikes, because the street has lower volumes and lower speeds, it's designed so that the bicyclists would just use the
lane.
Use the lane.
Yeah.
And this wouldn't work on Holly Street, but it could work here.
Okay.
And usually it includes something that actually discourages cars from using it. And that's where the speed table would come in at this intersection. It would be a disincentive to a car to just go boom, boom, boom.
Fast, right.
But it would be an incentive to pedestrians and a safety issue for pedestrians connecting the 2 parts of this neighborhood here. So that's where that idea came in.
Great. Okay, those are all my questions or comments. Thanks.
The bicycle alternative for alternatives, or bicycle boulevard for alternative C, would that also be for alternative D also? Or did I miss that somewhere in there? I probably did.
It's an add-on.
It's an add-on for both? Or?
It's an add-on for both.
Okay, so it could be, when it says C, from alternative C, it could say /D.
Right.
Okay.
We designed this alternative really not as a standalone alternative, but kind of a, like I said, one from column A, one from column B. This was the only one that was like that. We just wanted to see how this performed by itself. Yeah.
Okay, but you could use it on both alternatives, though. And so in a perfect world, then, if money was no object, and if you don't have an opinion, you don't have to tell me, D would be better.
D would be better, right?
Okay, in a perfect world. Okay.
Right.
Thank you. That's all.
One other benefit that it has is that it actually has more capacity. It would put the same amount of traffic through this interchange, and when the general plan's built out, it would move the performance of this interchange up on most of these loops by 1 letter grade. If it was D, it would go to C. If it was C, it would go to B.
Understand.
So, it makes it an easier city to get in and out of, and more predictable.
Just costs more.
Through the chair. I'm sorry. I
please.
just 2 thoughts came to mind, 2 questions. And the one is I actually had forgot to ask. The 467 comes out of what fund?
That comes out of the Traffic Impact Mitigation Fee Fund,
Okay.
which is being financed, it has a loan from the redevelopment agency. So we have the money up front to do it on a loan from the redevelopment agency, but as developments occur, such as PAMF,
We get paid back.
Pay that back.
Okay, and then the last question I had, I thought of this when you were showing the slide before. The land that's taken up now by the larger interchange, what happens to that?
It would remain in Caltrans jurisdiction, and
Okay.
it could be used for drainage overflow. That's one of the things I would keep in mind. We tend to have drainage problems down there, and it could make that kind of an overflow detention basin.
Very good, thank you.
Councilmember Klein?
I really don't have that many questions. Great job. As Mayor Royce said, I actually attended a lot of the events and the walking tour. I don't know how many people have walked over to Redwood Shores recently, but there was a walking tour, and one of the gentlemen actually fell because there are these massive jumps in pavement that Caltrans, of course, isn't really quick to take care of, and it's not in our jurisdiction to take care of it, but it's pretty unsafe. So I definitely think if we can get the money, alternative D is better. So let's go for it if we can get the money. And I would like to see Bicycle Boulevard evaluated because I think it's a great add-on, again, if we can find money for it.
Let me just hit you with all the questions up front, and then you can address them any way you'd like. One thing I noticed when I'm coming westbound over on the overpass and coming onto Holly, the two left turn lanes, occasionally the one on the inner side, tends to go straight through the intersection. So there would need to be some more directive striping. I would like to see how that's done. Second of all, I did see that you had talked about pedestrian access at the Holly industrial area. So could you just speak a little bit more about that? Third question was for the bicycle pathway. I think we had talked about this a little bit earlier, that you do have the ability to do some landscaping on the north side of East San Carlos Avenue. If we could talk about that very briefly. And the last bit, you've got a pedestrian underpass, et cetera. One of the things that we've heard previously was connection to the Bay Trail. I was curious if that made any connection or helps increase access there. Those are my questions, and then I'll have just one comment at the end.
Okay, hopefully I can get all those in order.
Take them any order you want.
All right. If I go backwards, I'll probably forget the first one. But the Bay Trail it comes to mind first. This would make a nice connection to the Bay Trail. Now, the Bay Trail isn't yet fully defined through San Carlos. The Bay Trail comes along across Bear Island and goes to the south end of Shoreway Road, picks up again in Redwood Shores, and we really don't know how it's going to connect those 2 points. Could either go down Shoreway Road or go along the levee that's outboard of the airport. Unfortunately, the levee outboard of the airport is really probably not possible because of its importance. It's part of an aviation zone. So assuming that it comes down Shoreway Road, this little undercrossing and this path would actually have a little spur on it that would take you right over to Shoreway. So that's kind of nice because if you're in the hotel here or going to have steak at Izzy's, you can make your way back to town that way. Okay, and so that works well. Now,
Pedestrian access?
Pedestrian access. At Holly and Industrial, it's going to be the same as you have now. A pedestrian phase in the intersection. It's push a button, wait for your turn, get a white walking figure and cross. There aren't a lot of pedestrians there at this point. I think there'll be more when the development occurs on the east side, but that's what's proposed.
Landscaping on East San Carlos?
Landscaping on here in this utility area. That's a good idea. And it's quite feasible. I even thought, you could put like public art there or something. We were hearing about public art earlier. So, yeah, I don't know. I get some crazy ideas sometimes.
And the, I guess, additional striping or additional directions on the westbound intersection. Again, the inner left turn when you're coming.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, now I got you. Well, under under the C alternative, it's pretty much as is.
Okay.
We did get Caltrans out there to put some more dots down to tell people where to go. But it's a full lane shift. You come across there and you easily end up in the wrong lane. It's very confusing. Now with D, the geometry works out better. You don't have that problem. So that's another side benefit of D. Yeah, it just by putting that bike lane in there, it shifts lanes a little bit and everything lines up beautifully.
Lastly, my comment, Mr. Mayor, is I wanted to express appreciation to Director Weil for his work. This has been a tremendous public outreach, and you have gone through a number of alternatives. It takes the work you did to look at the number of alternatives, to involve the public in going through this is tremendous. I wish there were more people from GESC to pat you on the back. I want to acknowledge Pat Bell for coming out, but it is tremendous work, and I really would like to acknowledge that you went out of your way to really make this a great project.
I think this is how you get a good project. We were at the context-sensitive solutions workshop, I think, up in Burlingame, and they talked about the old way was called the dad way.
Yeah.
Design, announce, defend. This is the project. This is what we're going to do, and then try to shoot it down. But I think this really I truly believe you get a better project when you get the community involved. So, and we have a great team. I think we've done it. I've picked some good people to work with. So, but I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Including the BPAC this year. Yeah.
Anything else? Great. Robert, I have 3 questions, I think, and I'll do one at a time because they're very different types of questions. The first one is I love, and let's talk about the base plan or it actually works in both plans, but the bicycle pedestrian trail proceeding eastbound, I think, is just a super idea. What I'd like you to maybe address is my concern, because it works well on an eastbound, but on a westbound, of course, on the baseline, it's not that clean. I'll never use the word unsafe, but you do have people kind of crossing the intersection. We don't have a lot of volume going through there, hardly at all. Of course, what we're trying to do is increase some volume and encourage people, but I don't want to encourage them to get on one side of the freeway and then create a nightmare coming back the other way. I know Measure D, which Alternative D solves and really enhances some of the safety, but it's still not as rich and as good as a solution that we've created the bike path the other way. I like that you've added, I know I talked to you about the Redwood Shores funding. This is a bike lane that goes to one city to the other. They need to be a partner. And of course, if council could help in that, we want to make sure we work with our cohorts there to make that happen. So my 2 questions are, one of these I've kind of asked you one time, and the other one is new. I've been in, because that trail is so good, I've been on, like in Arizona and Bend, Oregon. You have these biking communities where you have and we do have some bike lists. Matt, you could comment on this, where there is a bike lane, but it's a 2-way. It's a little wider. I don't know how wide. I know there's some awkwardness on then coming on the left side, versus the right side of the road. But for the cost of building 2, can bicyclists and pedestrians be patient and educated enough? And could something work where we could just make it a little beefier, better, wider bike trail and handle in a very, they're removed from the traffic. 2-way traffic. And my second question, you maybe can answer at the same time, is if we can't do that, and even if we go to the extra $5 million to $9 million D alternative, what happens when they come and going westbound and hit industrial? How do we get them left on industrial, down industrial to our alternative C?
Sure.
Question, because that's probably what I see as the most critical scary intersection for a bicyclist.
Okay, hopefully I can keep all that in mind.
So the question is, to summarize, is there a way we could make that bike path work? Because I am concerned about westbound. And as an example for westbound, what is in the plan now for even D? I mean, I think baseline and D is the same. How do we get them left on industrial from Holly, down industrial and right to C?
Yeah. Okay. Well, to address the westbound bicyclists, we did talk about this at some length with the Transportation and Circulation Commission, and Commissioner Pinero is here, and he'd be a good one to ask about how he sees this interchange.
Okay. Well, actually, we have a speaker card for him, so I'd like to hear that.
But it's not too bad right now because, from what I understand, I haven't bicycled this myself, but you don't have as much of a crossing traffic. You don't have as much of a heavy movement on this loop going south, as I understand it. And that's the really tricky one, where you're coming across here on a bicycle. You have to really look over your left shoulder, see if they're going to let you go across their path of travel, and then get over to this other side. It's particularly heavy in this direction, and it would be getting heavier.
Right. When you have 2 lanes, that's tough.
Yeah. We'd make this better with the baseline case by eliminating this loop, so you have one less merging movement
Right.
for bicycles.
That's D. If we go to D and spend the money, it's better. Yep.
Now, for bicyclists coming in this direction, chances are they probably will do that. We saw that quite a bit on the walking tour, where bicyclists were actually riding on a sidewalk on this side, and then they'd come down here and they'd use a pedestrian phase to get over to the bike lanes.
Interesting.
Yeah, we saw that quite a bit. We saw 2 or 3 bicyclists do that. That's not legal, but it's probably what a lot of people will do. It gets to be a problem if there's a lot of pedestrians and bicyclists trying to use that same narrow piece of sidewalk. Let's see. Let me go to this one. Now, in this larger plan, if we get a bike lane in the westbound direction, they still have a long way to cross over and turn left to go south on industrial. There's a new idea that's being used in some cities in the United States, not yet recognized in California, something called a bike box, where it works to take bicyclists, they come down this pocket, as Brad called it, and then they get in front of all the cars right here. They have their own space of pavement in front of the cars. So they get the same green light that the cars do, but they're in front of the cars and they go first. And so it makes it very easy to take a left turn there. So
when the light turns green, they go first?
They go first.
How do the cars know not to go?
Well, they're in front of the cars, so the cars have to follow them.
Oh, I see. Oh, they stand in front of them.
The bike lane is colored, and then the bike box comes across the intersection in the same color.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's not yet adopted in California, but that will be one solution to that problem that we'll take a look at.
So again, I'll just summarize. My only concern would be, if we get funding, sure, D works well with it, but the baseline, I would be concerned that we do it and then we have some accidents because we increase the volume on the right side, and all of a sudden we got to spend another $1 million for a solution for the westbound.
That part of your question I didn't answer. Ideally, we'd be able to take what you're referring to is called a Class 1 bike path or bike path, and its geometric requirements. It has to be a minimum of 8 feet wide with 2-foot shoulders each side. So it takes a total of 12 feet of width, and we just don't have room across the structure to fit that in there. And it would also need to be separated from the traffic because it would be going the opposite direction traffic by a barricade. So you need another 3 feet for the barricade. And then beyond that, you'd have to have a shoulder. And so you just can't fit all that in the structure. So that's the real sticky wicket with that one. You just can't make it work. with the geometry.
Through the chair, if I might, I can tell you what, I've been over there a couple times on my bike. And when I come back, even now, I'll go ahead and make the right turn because there's a nice bike lane on Industrial, that goes towards Belmont. And then you just find one of the streets, similar to East San Carlos Avenue, only on the north side of Holly. And you find one of those streets and go down because even though it's not marked for bikes or anything, as Mr. Weil said, if a street's not used that much, doesn't have a lot of traffic, people tend to go slow down it anyways. You just take the lane and don't worry about it. So that might be a solution, is to encourage that kind of activity. I don't know.
Okay. Second question, is that, 2.5 years ago, I was on the Planning Commission, and there were people here on council, and we all approved the same thing, where the mitigation for, it was part of the PAMP study, but it was for overall east side growth, that people, that we do two things, a left turn on Britain and a staging area or a widening on 200 feet or something. Basically, that staging area we would increase on Holly as you're going eastbound at Industrial. And so, I've always learned, being on the Planning Commission and Council, I actually respect and believe half of what traffic engineers say, because I've seen several things that have done and then it's changed. So now we're changing that. And we're saying, no, we don't need staging, but we did have Hexagon and David Black, I believe his name is, and
Gary Black,
and them say this is the solution, staging will improve. So now what we have is we're saying, well, no staging, and we now have 3 lanes going through. We're going to go to 2 lanes based on the drawing, because one's going to be a dedicated left turn lane. We have plenty of capacity on the double loop going northbound, but our capacity is now 1/3 less to get through the intersection. Now, again, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I'm kind of an analytical guy. I do know that this advanced loop, which is more intelligence, will help get more cars through. But why don't we do that and also staging? I know Greater East Side has some concerns. I mean, there were other alternatives of widening the whole street, a little bit or a medium amount or a whole lot. But if I just go back to the minimal impact to the Holly Street residents on that staging, to me, right now, when you drive and it's busy, cars go left, right. I mean, it's kind of like they're ready. When that light turns, those I call stage cars are ready. And if we don't have staging and you have 1/3 less lane, I am doubting the traffic engineer's recommendation. I'd like you to go back and study that and look at adding as an addendum or an add-on that we could do the looping, advanced looping, and staging. I mean, this is our 40-year solution. We're not going to do it again for another 40 years. And I want to make sure that we maximize the value and the throughput through Industrial to the freeway. So that's my second comment, but I ask it as a question. We had consultants 2.5 years ago say staging's great. So what happened to staging? Is it still, can it still be an option as an add-on?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, and appreciate that. Gary Black was on both teams. He was on the PAMF study and on this team. One of the things that happened is when we went out for proposals to and consultants to do this study, we asked them to tell us, well, what would you do in this situation? We got some free advice. And a competing team said, why don't you look at a 8-phase signal? That might solve your problem. And so we got a new idea in the mix. And when we tested out that idea, it would seem to work. We actually ran the model with that staging area, as you call it, versus not having the staging area. And the staging area does not improve the level of service.
Okay.
It may make it easier to position yourself in the intersection, but it doesn't improve the level of service.
Okay.
So now the other thought is that we can always, if we find we do all this, that it's not working, it's just too hard, it's too tight, doesn't work, having operational problems. Maybe people can't get into that left turn lane and they need to. We can go back and do that later. So, you know, it's not something that we will have done and then regretted. We can always go back and add it in.
Okay.
So, with that, I think from an engineering point of view and minimizing impacts, I think it's the right thing to do.
Okay. So my comment is I hear what you're saying, but again, with my experience, based on my comments of one less lane and what was recommended as staging, I would still like to have you look at that, would be my recommendation. Also, we could always go back. I think I'd like to put the best foot forward and try to do the right thing, the whole thing, one time. Even going back to Greater East Side 10 or 12 years from now and telling them now we're going to make another change is a lot more difficult than it appears talking about it. So anyway, comment there. And my last comment actually coincides with Mr. Grocot's thought. I too attended, like many of us, some of the study sessions and the other meetings that went on. And what was my question, there was a slide that showed volume on Holly Street, not on weekends, not at nights, but I believe it was a morning, 7 or 8 till 6 p.m. And it was amazing. Do you have?
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Hey, beautiful. And you'll see this time of night in my eyesight, I think it's 7. What was most interesting, I thought you'd see a 7 a.m. peak and then it goes down and then the commute traffic back. This is total, going east and west.
Correct.
And at the commute traffic, everybody coming home, it peaks again. And what I've noticed myself driving in is it peaks at lunchtime. But what this slide shows, the data, is it just stays peaked all day long. And so my recommendation is kind of ties in with a little bit what Mr. Grocott was talking about, is from the sake of simplicity and people what they get used to and our downtown businesses to enhance when we do have more development on the east side in PAMP. Those people are going to want to shop downtown. They're going to want to eat downtown. And if we could protect the rights of the citizens and provide parking for them in the evening when they come home from work, and totally, definitely on the weekends, I agree with that. But the timing to be extended for a good part of a day from morning to whatever those would be recommended, I think would be a good alternative to look at.
I think that's a good point.
And so, again, I asked, is that any comments on that based on this data?
Well, I think that's a good point. I think from an engineering point of view, I think that's a good idea worth looking at. I would actually revise my recommendation to say that's one of the things we should study in this
Wonderful.
In this alternative.
Great. Thank you. That's all. Those are my 3 questions. Tony, you ready? Because we wanted to hear what you wanted to say, and I'll give you another minute or 2 to comment on any other advice on some of the questions that have been asked here. Tony Panero, and Tony's also on our traffic and circulation.
Okay, you've introduced me.
Welcome.
Okay. You actually addressed my main points. When I and other members of the Transportation Commission were looking at this, we set as a goal that we should feel comfortable crossing that freeway with our children, or in my case, grandchildren. And the plan that you see almost achieves that. And you pointed out the reason why it doesn't. It's coming back as a problem. From the viewpoint of somebody commuting to work, the improvements coming westward are significant. But they still require a level of cycling skill that I would not expect of my grandchildren. So anyway, so as we go forward, if there's anything we can do to figure out how to get cyclists back west, and especially dealing with that left-hand turn onto Industrial, which is where the commute traffic is going, that would be good. It's disappointing that there's not enough room for a full Class 1 bike lane. Just The other point I wanted to make is when the overpasses on 101 were built in the last, I don't know how many decades, they were all built to a design idea to maximize cars flow. Okay? And it turns out that they chose what in hindsight was a bad mechanism. The full clover leaf turns out not only to be bad for pedestrians and bicyclists, it turns out to be inefficient for cars. And what we're finding is that fixing it is extremely expensive. When I talk to some real experts in terms of bicycle facilities, what do we do about Holly? They say, well, hope for an earthquake. Okay. And that at the time, that was funny. So I guess what the point I'm leading to is we really need to focus on doing the best we can for the bicyclists and pedestrians. Because if we're not going to get another shot for a very long time. Okay. Just real quick, one last thing, I want to second Pat Bell's comments and add to it the observation that the interaction between staff and consultant and commission and community was flawless. We had people from the community were contributing actively and giving in on details based on their understanding of of the situation, and it was very good to watch. So,
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and again, thank you for all the time you spend in giving us advice. Scott Marsters, also speaker card.
Scott Marsters, San Carlos. I too want to say thank you to Robert. I mean, Pat Bell sings his praises exceptionally well, and what a difference it makes from the way it was even a year ago, where solutions were being forced upon the neighborhood instead of solutions being, worked out with the neighborhood. And I also want to thank the Traffic and Circulation Commission. They got out, they walked the neighborhood, they talked to people in the neighborhood, they really did a wonderful job. And as far as the neighborhood goes, I think, it's a testament to both the Traffic and Circulation Commission and Robert that there are no sea of red shirts here tonight, because I think they've done such a wonderful job of really throwing out ideas and solutions that are acceptable to the neighborhood. I do have a couple of things that I'd like to ask about. One is the issue of the light at the train station, and how that gets moved. When it gets moved, it kind of gets moved into the middle of where the taxis and the shuttles are. So that's an issue I think that needs to be addressed. I do have an issue with the idea of a raised area at East San Carlos Ave and Bayport, because I'm concerned that you're going to take the commercial traffic that's on East San Carlos Ave and you're going to push it onto the residential streets. And so if there's some way you could define that as a bike area without forcing what little traffic there is on there for those businesses off of that street, that would be a better way of doing it. And on the what I consider the left side or the utility side of East San Carlos, I would rather see something like an urban trail with landscaping and a way to be able to walk from the train station down to the businesses, which brings up sort of Randy's point about, all those businesses that are going in down there and Panth. I would rather not see them use Holly. I would rather make it so that they can walk to the downtown rather than to hop into their cars. And so instead of making Holly Street 2 lanes in each direction or making that stack let's make it convenient for them to walk downtown if possible. Because our goal down the road is to get more people to walk rather than to make it more convenient for them to drive their cars from PAMF to the downtown. And the last thing is really the access at Holly Street and Industrial for pedestrians. And right now, there really isn't a light to be able to go from what I think of as the 76 station to the east side. There is no pedestrian access across there. And so that will be really important as part of this to make sure that you can actually go all four directions and walk around that. Because I've had people in the neighborhood say, there's an In-N-Out Burger going there. Can we walk to it? And so having that as part of this, or as having that as part of a mitigation for the In-N-Out Burger would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Tom Newton, welcome.
Good evening, City Council. Tom Newton, 883 East San Carlos. I live about, I spend about 10 hours a day, about a block away from this intersection. I use it about 3 times daily, so what I have to offer you is anecdotal information. And I wanted to comment on the mayor's suggestion for staging lanes. Staging lanes, in my anecdotal experience, work great so long as the lane you are staging goes where you want it to go. We have a staging lane going to San Jose on northbound Industrial, for example, which during rush hour is not used at all. Everybody wants to go to San Francisco. And one of the things that the plan that has been put forth is that these proposals allow for 2 lanes going towards San Francisco. I'm not going to say that's going to eliminate the need for staging lanes, but we have 5 lanes that are dedicated southbound 101. There's 2 at Harbor, 1 at Holly, 2 at Britain. We only have 1 dedicated lane going to San Francisco. So by the addition of an additional lane to San Francisco, it may alleviate the need for staging lanes both at Industrial and at Holly. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, move to extend the meeting to 10:45.
Okay, here, second. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, opposed? Good. Thank you. Okay, anybody else like to speak on this item? Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion, if that's what's necessary here, is there?
I'd like to make a couple comments.
Oh,
also,
comments first,
maybe.
okay.
A little bit
All right.
more.
Do we want to comment on a motion at least?
Yeah, why don't you
make the motion, that's
Chair.
fine. Go ahead and make the motion, I'll pass on another thought or two quickly.
Okay, so I'd make the motion that we approve the 2 alternatives as listed here, and go forward with the additional recommendation of pursuing the bicycle boulevard on alternative C. And then also, Mr. Weil said there was something he wanted to add, and I think we all agreed to it, regarding the study of Holly Street, I believe it was. Do you want to?
Study of staging, consider staging on Holly?
Well, not consider staging. There was something else that
I
he.
would amend the recommendation to go with what the mayor said in terms of evaluating, changing the time for parking on Holly Street to accommodate the fact that there are, throughout the working day, there is a heavy traffic volume. So
Okay.
I'm not sure that's the, I don't think we should necessarily do that, but I think we should study that.
Study it.
Yeah.
And that's what this is all about, is studying all these options.
Right.
Sure.
So that would be my motion.
Through the chair, would the motion maker also add on the approval of the contract from Mark Thomas?
Oh, definitely.
Yes,
Yes.
Sorry, just. Second the motion?
Second? We have motion and second. Any
That's it.
comments before we vote? Okay. So I just have one here, maybe, just a thought. It deals with funding and getting grants and all this stuff. We were talking about spending $5 million, maybe going to $9 million, and actively pursuing getting federal and state and county grants and so forth. I've gotten some input, though, over the past year. I know we got grants when we did industrial. We had curb cuts. We had shallows painted and so forth. I'm not there to say pros and cons or what people's reaction to all that. But we're in a tough economy, and I just want to emphasize that even though we may get an extra $5 million, it's still we, the taxpayer, who's paying for that. And so, on the other hand, we don't want to be foolish. If we don't ask for the money, we're not going to get anything. And our finance director is going crazy maybe with what I'm saying now. But I look first at San Carlos, the way I operate, but I also step back. And when we get federal funding or state or county, I do within my heart do think that, hey, is this really good and a good payback and something that we should be spending money? Because it's all our money. It just doesn't come from San Carlos. So we're talking about a lot of money here. My reference is, D's great, but it's an extra $4 million. It does also, from the pedestrian and bicyclists, make tremendous improvements. However, it does add what is one signal now in industrial. When you're coming northbound, it adds 3 signals. You're going through
the chair. We're going to be voting on just approving to study both of them. So
Okay.
just to.
I'm talking about proceeding with the study in which then we will be offered a chance to spend lots of money.
Right.
And that's what my comments are. And I'm actually near the end of that, so I think I'm done. So that was my only comment as we proceed forward to think about that. Thank you.
Call the question.
Call the question.
Call question?
Councilmember Ahmad?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Klein?
Yes.
Mayor Royce?
Yes. Thank you all very, very much. That's a tremendous effort for really a lot of long-term benefit for the city of San Carlos. We are now on our last item, 11C, and this is consideration, recommended city council review and discuss report on web links to the city council websites and vote to adopt one of the alternatives listed in the staff report as the city's policy in this area. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. As council will recall at the last meeting, Mayor Royce put forward a proposal which is attached to the staff report, providing a one-time link to whichever council member is the mayor to an external website, and also to have a 90-day quiet period prior to an election where the mayor is running for re-election. We're showing that as alternative one. In discussing this with the city manager and the city attorney, we came up with several other alternatives, which are showing you in the staff report. The second alternative recognizes the fact that almost all of the council members do have websites and Web 2.0 sites, and it occurred to staff that it probably would make sense that if we were offering external links to the mayor, probably would also could offer similar links to the balance of the council. Our approach to the quiet period was a little date. We proposed a so-called no-link period starting on the opening day of filing for candidacy for either running for council or any other office where one or more of the council members might be seeking office. The third option is basically a continuation of our current program, which is we provide a web page for each elected council member, which has their picture, their official committee assignments, and a bio that they submit along with the city email address and phone number. Alternative 4 is something that we added after discussion with the city attorney. We're informed that the Fair Political Practices Commission is exploring this area as we speak, and they may have a policy on it down the road. They have not told us how long down the road is, so we could be looking at weeks, months, years, whatever. But that's an option. And then finally, as with all our staff reports, the council may wish to give us a different approach. So you have 5 choices. Staff believes that adding one or more web links is a fairly straightforward process. So this is really a classic council policy decision and discussion, we think. So there you have it.
So if I could just kind of add thoughts here, since I'm the one who put it on the agenda here. I guess what's driving this, I'm not looking at this being for me this year. I'm looking at it as a long-term decision for the mayor, a way to communicate. I think we do a good job. We have the website out there. There's various things that we do, but you could never do enough. I do have a copy of Terry Nagel, who was the mayor last year of Burlingame. Similarly, this is something that she does, puts it on her webpage. It's a one-page monthly newsletter, and that's kind of what I'm proposing, is that whoever's mayor would actually have the opportunity to do a newsletter every month for the city. Also, I think what's important is we're a service organization. I think what's key here is people want customer service. They have ideas. They have complaints, and they don't know a lot of times what's going on regarding Transit Village or 1001 Laurel and so forth. So I do think it is an added responsibility, which could be the mayor. I'm making a case in this case to do two roles: to continue to communicate and inform as much as possible to the public, which is what a newsletter would do, and that would also open the gates up to listen and to be available, because this will create questions and comments and communication coming back into the mayor's seat. So there are other options. There's town hall meetings, city manager I talked about, office hours, mailings. These all have cost and time. I think the newsletter is the one that has almost no city time. It's basically a one-time setup with a link that goes to my own site, in which I would post every month. But again, I would like to make it not for me. It's basically, is this a good long-term communication tool for our citizens of San Carlos?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I would be happy to support, at this point, the web link for the mayor. I think there's room for some additional discussion regarding the other points. I'd probably like to have it agendized, possibly at a retreat or another time, to really talk about how we want to deal with our web presence. I'd probably also want to roll in a redesign of our website and how we get information out in general. But the immediate issue right now is you are the mayor. I would support mechanisms for you to get information out. And for the purposes of tonight, if there's support to move that forward, I'd say let's move that forward and put the other discussion off to another time.
Okay.
Councilman
Yeah.
Klein?
Okay, so I'm in favor of there being a mayor newsletter. I'm fine with it going up on the city website. I am not in favor of, however, linking to personal websites. So I don't know how you'd want to change that. I'd actually want to wait the FPPC ruling. But if we don't want to wait that long, that's fine. And the reason I'm not for linking to someone else's website is because it's always election period. We're always weighing in on something, so we would have to really flush this out a bit more to make rules. And yes, fine, we don't want to have people write during a council election or if someone's running for another office. I get that, but I mean, we get involved in a lot of other stuff. Some of us support certain people for assembly. Some of us support certain people for Congress or school board measures. So there's a lot of stuff. And then do we allow people to comment? We should talk about that, because that's going to be a whole different discussion. So I just don't think it's flushed out enough. I would be in favor, though, of a newsletter on the webpage with no link. So you would still have that ability, and I think that's great. I think that's a great idea. Yeah. Just the linking to the other people's web pages, I just don't think right now it's flushed out.
Yeah. So can I ask either city manager or city attorney, is there any distinguishment concern, one site versus a link?
Well, the issue of there's a state law that prohibits newsletters and mass mailings to go out, and the reason for the external website is to stay as far away from having a city-produced newsletter. The concept is, under the regulation is not to have any staff time used to promote council members or the mayor using city staff time. So the idea to have the external website is to have it produced by the member, but you could have a policy, it occurs to me from this discussion, that just strictly says that the link is to the page of the outside website that is a newsletter page, and not be a general link that might be cause some of the other problems.
Yeah, I guess through the chair, I was just going to mention that in looking at practices with other cities and other city councils. What we find is most of the time when we receive, in some cases, newsletters from elected officials, usually they're not only hosted by the elected official, but the elected official actually hires a site like Constant Contact or something and pays for all costs of the newsletter being pushed out. They maintain the email list, so there's no link at the city, and it's very much an arm's length transaction. And I think that was one of the reasons we put number 3 on there, is to continue with current practice and then leave it up to the mayor or any other council member who wishes to have newsletter, blog, whatever, and at their expense to produce it, push it, maintain it. So it's, to Mr. Rubin's point, completely arm's length.
Through the chair, to what our city attorney said, is there a really big and maybe the assistant city manager can, is there a big cost difference between posting a letter or posting a link? Isn't it essentially just posting something on a page?
Well, the link is posted once, where the
Correct.
letter would have to be posted once a month. It may only take a few minutes, but it's every month.
Yeah, I
That's
think
the difference.
Yeah, and I would concur with the mayor. I think to Councilmember Klein's question, obviously, if we put, I think the mayor referred to it as a one-time link. Once we put the address of that external website, we're done. If we're actually posting a newsletter that one or more of you would create, we'd have to post it, email it out, et cetera. So there is some staff involvement, yes.
I mean, through the chair, I'm sorry.
Just
through the chair, this concept does make me nervous from the standpoint that there are prohibitions against hard copy newsletters.
Right.
It's not clear to me that is wholly related to just the electioneering aspect of the hard copy, from the standpoint that they do put a dollar value on what you can and can't do in terms of spending for that particular purpose. But technology is changing. We understand that they're making rules and regulations, and yet something about this feels very, very similar to a hard copy newsletter that is prohibited by the FPPC. And that's what has made us nervous here. I've been involved in a long time in discouraging the production of newsletters or the printing of photographs of council members in publications, because I've always understood that it's frowned upon by the FPPC, but they don't have rulings in this particular area or arena. And so if the council wants to go down this route and allow a link until they come up with rules and regs that can give us some guidance, I don't think there's anything illegal or necessarily improper, but it does, I just want to be clear, it does make us nervous in terms of this perhaps running afoul of future rules and regulations that they may establish.
So I'd just like to respond on that. So I did call the FPPC, and early on into what I was questioning, I said, I'm a new mayor, I want to do the right things, I'm thinking of a newsletter. I have an example, another city that does this. And she said, Mr. Royce, I could stop you right there. We currently do not have any regulations on internet usage for newsletters. I said, fine. And I said, well, my next question was, well, is this, you're the fair political practices, is this fair? She goes, well, I can't comment on that. I could also comment that we are looking into internet usage. And what I'll smile at is the internet's been around about 20 years. And so this recommendation from our city attorney and city manager about waiting is not something that I think is, I guess I'm just a little bit more of a doer. I mean, let's do stuff. If things change, we'll change. But with the internet being around, I'm not sure this government organization is going to react in the next few years. I don't see anything happening, and basically I qualified that there's no issues with the FPPC in doing a newsletter.
So my comment would be that I would be fine with number 1, but then coming back later, and it's too late, my brain is fading right now, to actually discuss the policy and look deeper into it, because one of the things I'm thinking of is, and I understand Mr. Weiss's point about something that's a hard copy and FPPC's regulation of that. But for instance, you go to government affairs meeting, and there's all these different people that rep the reps who give reports on what's going on, and we've always relied on the mayor, if he's there, to do that for us. But what you're reporting on is what we've done or things we're looking at doing. And, you know, I would assume your newsletter would be the same thing, but, well, I guess what I'm driving at is, I think, just like, you know, a few years ago, we really delved into our own code of ethics and wrote a whole code of ethics. I think the idea is okay. I think all of us saying this is what would be allowed or expected of the mayor is okay, and then these are things that are not okay, to give some guidelines. So that would be it.
Mr. Casella.
Well, I'm from the last century. I just can't deal with this stuff. I agree with Mr. Weiss and completely. I think you're going down a path here that it sounds like a great idea. Hey, you know, it's great for this mayor and maybe next mayor and the next mayor, but the fourth mayor decides to. I mean, I appreciate your comments, Mr. Grocott. I don't know how you're going to put guidelines on this puppy. You're going to say, well, you can say the, but you can't say and. I'm extremely nervous about this relative to the fact of separating public funds, public usage, whether it's a nickel. We can't go upstairs and make a phone call. You know that. We all know that. Use the phone up there for a personal call. And we're going to, all of a sudden, we're going to, and granted, it might take 10 minutes and cost $5, but it's still public money. And what's going to be in this, I mean, I want to get information out. Mr. Mora sends us every 2 weeks a newsletter, which is a public thing, as I understand it. It's I don't know. I apologize if it's on the web or the website or not.
Ours is not, but some cities do put,
You know,
put
and
it up
maybe
there.
that's the step that I have no problem with staff preparing what's going on in the city, but I don't think we need personally to need one of us to say what's going on in the city. I mean, staff can do it, and let's do it. I want the information out, but I'm extremely nervous about this, so I'm not going to vote for. If we have a vote here,
Well, and Councilmember Grisilli, to your point, I think one of the reasons that we see some of the cities putting either the city manager's bi-monthly or bi-weekly newsletter up or something similar or a blog or whatever it is to address your concern and I think the city manager's concern to get the information out, but also to avoid the appearance of using public funds to advance.
I mean, it's to our protection, quite honestly, if we do it that way. Not, you know, I mean, so we don't have any problem. There's there's a fence there. If you get into and again, I know I'm from the last century and I know the internet's been around 20 years and I'm real slow on this stuff, but I'm extremely nervous about this, and so I won't be voting for that, even though I appreciate why you're doing it and I know why you're doing it, and it's a good idea to get information out, but I don't believe this is the way to connect any of us to our websites or to our links or anything personal, because there's that chance, and somebody's going to get themselves. It's not going to be the city that's going to get itself into the problem. That individual is going to get themselves in the problem. And once you deal with Sacramento, trust me, you're in a lot of trouble. Even though the lady perhaps on the phone said we don't deal with the internet, well, okay, it's coming, and anyway. I've made my point. So
Through the chair. Yeah, I don't want to be misunderstood because I actually agree entirely with Mr. Grisilli. But all I was saying is if we were going to do number one, then I would want to, approve it tonight, but then come back and put some guidelines on it. I don't want to just say, yeah, go ahead, the mayor can do a link to a website, and that's a so-called newsletter. Who the heck knows what's going to be in the newsletter? But that said, I more agree with Mr. Grisilli. I'd rather take the newsletter that we get. In fact, I've wondered that sometimes. This is great. How come the community doesn't have access to it? So something like that. And my last point is, if you want to do a group page on Facebook and push that out and make comments to the public, and the public's pretty savvy. If all you have to do is Google any one of our names, and you're going to come up with all kinds of stuff. I recently visited Mr. Omar's website just to see what was out there, and thought, this is pretty interesting. And looked at other council members, not ours, because I think, from what I could tell, you're the only one that actually has your own website. I know Randy keeps track of 94070. But I was, in anticipation of this, I was looking at, the Terrys and some of the other council members around that keep websites on a regular basis. I have a website, but I haven't touched it since 2005. So
unless there's other thoughts with the time here of our extensive meeting, can I ask for a motion? We'll see where it goes.
I'm just going to take a guess at this, where we're going to go with it. I'd like to make a motion to await FPPC action and revisit the issue after that.
I'm sorry, so I'm.
Alternative number 4.
Second.
The second option.
No, number 4.
Number 4. I'm sorry.
And I second.
Okay. Here a second?
Yeah, here.
Okay. Discussion?
Call the question.
Call the question?
Councilmember Ahmad?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Klein?
Yes.
Mayor Royce?
No. Okay.
Is that it?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you very much. Move to adjourn.
That's it.